welcome to episode 24 of Northern Lights, and the last in the current series of the online chat show which focuses on football in the north and northeast of Scotland. My name is Martin Johnston, and each week I've been joined by our resident journalist and fellow Rothis, Dave Edwards. Joining Dave and I this week are two well-known names from North football, both from the past and the present. Also joining Dave and I this week is a special guest host who definitely meets the specialist criteria for being part of the team here at Northern Lights. Just a few guys and gals reminiscing about the good old days and from time to time giving a distanced opinion on the modern game. Yes, folks, we keep saying it, a bit like Soccer AM meets the Antiques Roadshow. Our first guest had a phenomenal career as a referee without any question of doubt. Alan Freeland passed the refereeing exam on his 70th birthday back in 1978. Little did he think that some 40 years later he would have officiated in 17 Senior Cup finals, 25 European club matches and 25 internationals, give or take a few here and there. Alan's career has seen him officiate from Brora Rangers to Barcelona and from Milan to McKeswick Park. His list of appointments is second to none and far, far too numerous to list here. Welcome to Northern Lights, Alan Freeland.
Good evening, Martin. Thank you very much. I nearly didn't recognise myself in that introduction.
Well, we had a choice, Alan. I could have done what we normally do and list folks' career, but then that would have only left us about 20 minutes for the rest of the show. So I thought I'd do the shorter version. Really good to see you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invite.
Alan, lovely to see you. And I've used up all my my printer paper printing out your CV. It's an amazing CV.
Yeah, it does go on a bit. It's a bit like when I start talking, I don't stop to a point.
Now, we've got something in common, Alan, because in 1978, you won the Peter Craigmile Trophy. Now, I'm going to tell you, it was either the year before or possibly 2 years before I won the Peter Craigmile Trophy.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So what's your excuse for writing some of this stuff about the laws of the game these days?
Well, there we go. No, I was out injured. I was working in Aberdeen in the bank, and I was out injured for a year with a knee injury. And I was told that I could maybe get an operation in my knee and it wouldn't be guaranteed to be a success, or I could maybe rest up for a year, play no football, and just rest it. And that's what I decided to do, Alan. And it worked. And in an effort to get fit, I took the referee's exam and I refereed in the amateur league in Aberdeen for 6 months. That was an education for sure. But in order to allow me to do that, I took the referee's exam. I'm trying to remember the two guys who took it. Two older gentlemen, one had red hair, one was a great big, nice fella, and we did the classes in I would say, a church hall roundabout Queen's Cross, was my memory.
Absolutely, that's where I started my refereeing, meeting up at the church hall at Queen's Cross. Billy Knowles was the chap that took me through my course.
Yeah, I know Billy. Yeah, it wasn't Billy.
No, wouldn't have been George Perry by any chance, would it? No. But I'm not sure. That's going back before my time, of course.
Yeah, of course it was, Alan. Of course it was. But it was an education to pass the referee's exam, to sit it and pass it. And it was the same time that the fellow referees at the time in the amateurs were people like Davy Argo and Eddie Coots, people like that.
Yeah, Snowy Fisher. Oh, these were great guys. And when you went in, they were the guys that came to all the meetings and kept the young boy right. You know, give us words of wisdom. Things that weren't in the laws.
Very much so. And I don't know how you did it, because there was one game I refereed up at, where was it now? One of the pitches up, can't remember where it was exactly, but this guy was going to have me. He was going to see me after the game. I'd sent him off, and he met me beside my car, and I said, look, you touch me, you're going to be banned for life. And he took that as a warning and he let me go, but he was about 3 times the size of me. And did you ever have something like that, Alan, to face?
Yeah, I remember I was still quite young. I can't quite remember, 18, 19, and I was doing the under 27 league that it was back in the day. And these two guys, Hoss and Pirry, came face to face, and big Kevin Pirry, rest his soul, headbutted this guy, blood everywhere. And I thought, I've now got to send this guy off. And I went up with trepidation and said, I'm really sorry, but could you go off the pitch? And he said, I'm really sorry, Alan. And then all of a sudden I puffed up my chest a little bit more and said, on you go, on you go. So that was an early experience that you have to come through.
Alan, we're going to hear lots more of your stories about refereeing. For the moment, it's a delight to have you on the final Northern Lights for the moment.
Thank you very much.
Our second guest this evening is a Yorkshireman who first landed in the North East as a serviceman at RAF Kinloss. Charlie Charlesworth first hit the North football scene with the service side, which at that time competed in the North Regional Junior League, before Rob Mulheron took him to Nairn County. A year later, Charlie made the move to Inverness Thistle, with whom he would tragically suffer a leg break at Ross County. After a number of attempts to resume his playing career after injury and jetting around Europe for Queen and Country, Charlie pursued a career in coaching, firstly with Elgin City, then Calais and Ross County. In 2007, Charlie was appointed manager at Lossiemouth, where he remained until 2012, when he moved to Banff to take charge of Devonvale. Charlie was persuaded to return to Lossie in 2014 before moving up the hill to Dufftown to assist Mo Morrison at Westburn Park. After a short stint with Huntly, Charlie returned to Dufftown, where he remains as current co-manager with Jim Stables. A very warm welcome to Charlie Charlesworth.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Good to see you, Charlie. You're looking well.
Thank you.
Have you been working right through the lockdown? Have you been keeping the country safe?
First bit, yes. Second bit, possibly not, no. Yeah, I've been working pretty much all the way through. We've got a small team, so like everybody else, we've had to adjust around COVID, you know, so a lot of working from home, and I've just kind of been keeping the office going on the camp, you know, and just making the changes. And then now we're getting back to work in sort of like a split shift system, really, you know, so we've got the footfalls kind of reduced, if you like. So, but it's just, it's hard going in it for everybody, and a lot of adjustment, a lot of changes to make your jobs work, really, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. Of course, you've got just more and slightly more in COVID to contend with. You've got the occasional Russian jet as well, but we'll not go into that. Great to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Good evening, Charlie. Lovely to see you, my friend.
Yes, you too, Dave. It's been a little while, I think.
It has. It's been a long time since you and I and my wife and your lovely wife Linda had a lovely night out at the old
Tynet, wasn't it?
Yeah, at the
Tynet.
Tynet. It was a lovely evening.
Yeah.
The chat was all about football.
Yeah, unfortunately, Royce was there as well, though, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah. It wasn't all bad. Royce was paying. It wasn't all bad, was it?
No, it wasn't. Well, I mean, he was obviously trying to get me back at Lossie then, I think, or maybe I'd have just joined back. So the food was on him, wasn't it? If I remember rightly, Dave. That's
true, Charlie. You must take a great pleasure from watching both your boys playing Highland League, because I know Martin is back at Lossiemouth. I take it he's got over his injury, which he told me had ended his career, but I take it he's back playing and enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, he's always obviously it's always been hard work for him to get 90 minutes on Saturday, you know, with the work he's had to do during the week for various little niggles here and there. So he's had a bit of time off, concentrated on his work, particularly through this period that we're all in just now. And then I think with the rest and everything else, and perhaps a little bit more spare time with the COVID scenario to get himself fitter and one thing and another, he's looking pretty good just now. And he seems to be playing the pre-season friendlies with Lossie and coming through them as well. So fingers crossed he's doing okay, yeah.
Yeah, and his younger brother Colin, he's back in training as well.
Yeah, and they're back. Yeah, he's back at Devonvale, obviously. I took him there in 2012-ish, didn't I? And then he got a 4-year contract at Inverurie, Locos, and then he came back to Vale, which is what's his second or third season, I think it is now, isn't it? so they're back training as well. But I think Colin generally stays a little bit less injury. He's a bit less injury prone. I think he does have the odd hamstring injury in there, just through his sheer pace. I think more than anything else, which goes hand in glove, doesn't it, with sort of typically fast paced players.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're both doing fine.
If I remember rightly, the only time they played together under you, Charlie, was at the youth team at Elgin. Would that be right?
They played together at Vale. I took them both to Vale, didn't I?
So they did. That's right.
Yeah. So essentially, Colin sort of started his time out at Lossy. Martin was sort of coming down from Cali, Ross County, down to Cali to Elgin, then went across to Bucky, and obviously played each other when we were at Lossy and he was at Bucky, kind of thing. And then really they came together when we were all at Devonvale for a season and a bit. I think it would have been with time we got Martin there. Then I came back to Lossy, and then Colin went to Locos, and Martin, what did Martin do? Stayed at Vale a bit longer, didn't he? And then he came to Lossy to me, didn't he? Yeah, something like that. You kind of lose track a little bit, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I look forward to seeing both of them playing, hopefully, as soon as we can. And obviously, yourself as well, Charlie. It'd be great to touch base with you again.
Yeah, that's great, Dave. Thank you very much. It's great to be here and it's great to speak to you.
Cheers, bud.
Thank you.
And for our last show tonight, we are joined by a third host who most definitely has Highland League football as part of her DNA. Carole Innes is a Rothis who, in addition to being a supporter of her hometown club, is an avid follower of Aberdeen FC. Carole is the youngest daughter of former goalkeeper Ali Farker, who was a custodian for Rothis and Lossiemouth in the early to mid-1960s. And maintaining the family connection, Carole's mum, Wilma, is the niece of Lossiemouth legend Norman Kellis, who is honoured with a street named after him in the coastal town. That by default means that Carole is also related to Norman Kellis Jr. and his brother Fraser, two names synonymous with Highland League football in the 80s and 90s. Therefore, it's fair to say that Carole most definitely has Highland League football running through her veins. Welcome to Northern Lights, Carole Innes.
Thank you very much, Martin. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for asking me to be your co-host tonight on your last show. Carole, you have no idea how difficult it was putting that together and reading out without saying Carole Farker. I had when I typed it up and put it up on the screen, I had to go back in and change it. I was gonna welcome you at the end as Carole Farker, but you know. I wouldn't have minded. Well, I obviously grew up with Carole and Kerry Farker, so yeah. And when you go home, I'm sure you're more than often referred to as Carole. But it's great that you could join us because you're no stranger to this type of thing. You've been doing a bit of fundraising at Aberdeen through the community trust and various bits and pieces. So you should be well accustomed to this type of thing. But you have exactly the right criteria for being on Northern Lights. You're Rothis born and bred. So welcome to the show. Thank you.
Carole, it's lovely to meet you, if not in person, certainly over the airwaves. A delight to meet you, Maria. You too, Dave. It's been nice talking over Twitter, but it's even nicer to meet you by Zoom. Well, I look forward to maybe meeting you one day, maybe at the Ladies' Day at McKessick Park. That would be good, in the Grant Hall. Well, if I can remember a Ladies' Day, yes, it would be very nice to meet you there. Ashley tells me they're amazing events. They certainly are. They raise a lot of money for the club. Very well attended, and yes, I'm hoping next year's one goes ahead, but we'll see. But I didn't attend last year's one, and then obviously this year's one was cancelled. But yeah. Yes, a great time to go home and meet up with a lot of well-kent faces and have a laugh at the football. I think I'm the only one that actually sits in the stands and watches the football. I think the rest of them are more concerned with the kind of topping up the little bottles in the bags. But I actually do watch the football, and I did join Nishi on the bench and discuss the merits of the team. Not just their legs and stuff, but actually how they were playing. So. Well, it's good to hear, David. For once, if Carole, at least there was somebody on the bench who knew what they were speaking about.
Sorry, Nishi.
I know, it's good fun. It's great that they do it.
There is one name you missed out, Martin, and it's the name of one of the nicest guys I ever met. And I'm not saying that because his granddaughter is in front of me at the moment. Willie Kellis, who was steward at the Rothis FC Social Club, was an absolute gem. He was a lovely man. He always had time for everyone. And he was a lovely, lovely man, Carol. I'm sure you're very proud of your granddad.
Yeah, great memories of my granddad. Sadly passed away mid-80s. But yeah, he was loved by everybody, and always one for a joke and a laugh. And he had time for everybody. So yeah, I've got very, very fond memories of my granddad. Very fond.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a tinge of something here. My father actually passed away in the social club in Rothis when he died. He was playing a game of pool and he went, great shot. He died instantly, and I had to go and pick up the pieces. And your granddad was a great support, and I miss him. I miss him greatly. He was a lovely, lovely man, Carol.
Yeah, he was. He was indeed.
Now, happier times. I think you're a hen bogger as well, aren't you?
Yes.
Hen bog 2, cock inch 1.
Hey. HP.
I'm just doing a bit of reminiscing. It'll mean nothing to anybody else. But while you two were having that conversation about Willie Kellis, I could hear in the background was the tune of Danny Boy. You'll get exactly what I'm speaking about.
That's right.
Great to see you, Carol.
Yeah.
One final remark, Carol. You also know what Up the Dooney is, and it's nice. There's not very many on this programme know Up the Dooney.
Oh, I've been up the Dooney many times. It's
well, there you go.
it's one of my favourite places when I go home. I love going up the Dooney, and yeah, it's nice that they've got signs to it now. But I used to like it when nobody else knew where it was. And you could go up there and hide. But of course, they've got the golf course and stuff above it now, and you get an awful lot of golf balls flying down there. Sometimes you've just to watch when you're But no, Up the Dooney's a great place.
Wonderful. On that note, Carol, it's a delight to have you on the final Northern Lights for the moment. Thanks again, Carol.
Thank you.
So here we are, Dave. Programme number 24. I'm not going into details of numbers because I'm going to have numbers at frequent intervals during the night. But who'd have thought 24 weeks ago? I never even thought we'd get 4 weeks, to be quite honest. I thought it would be a real struggle to get content, but here we are. Well, I'm kind of happy with the outcome. There's a lot of people speaking about it. I'm actually finding people, strangely enough, coming into the football club to buy their season tickets, etc., who have got no connection with so much Rothis or Highland League as such. They've just been looking to get a football fix, and obviously there's been a wee bit of a... The good thing for me is that the football club, Peterhead, unbeknown to me, had actually been putting a bit on our website. It's a bit of an embarrassment to say the general manager has to be reading his own website, but has been doing this almost a running commentary of shows. So they've kind of been directing traffic towards us. And I've had lots of people coming in and saying that they've liked the fact that we've mentioned a lot of names, etc., from the past. A lot of people I don't know about, a lot of people I've learned about. I've learned a lot of things from guests, and even wee snippets like today that I didn't know that Willie Kellis played amateur football in Rothis in the old Speyside League. So, you know, it's great to be able to pick up that kind of thing. Have you had any shout outs this week, Dave?
Yes, we can say hello to a gentleman from a bit further south in this, Kenny Sabiston, who's an avid watcher of the programme, and our mate Martin Stewart. Martin's been on again saying how much he'll miss this programme. He's a legend, a Huntly legend, and he's been a legend in this show as well. We like Martin. He's one of the top men and a great footballer in his day.
Yeah, his employers will be pleased that he's going to stop watching the show and maybe start doing his job now. There can't be many houses getting built at the moment.
Probably not.
Do you have an answer? Because obviously, Carol, sorry?
Can I have a shout out to my dad because it's his birthday today?
Well, it was his birthday last Wednesday, Carol.
Last Wednesday,
because it's Sunday.
He was 80. He was 83, so shout out for
So
Ali.
a late happy birthday shout to Ali Farker for last Wednesday night.
For last Wednesday.
Charlie?
Can I have a quick shout out as well, please? Nomi Kellis is my neighbour.
Is that right?
Tell him
Okay. Well, I hope you've got a hand tied down and kept safe.
Hi, Nomi. How are you doing?
Well, just to keep that theme then, I actually refereed Nomi Kellis's testimonial. There you go.
Oh, right, okay.
Back in the days when the SFA didn't make the appointment, they ultimately made the appointment, but the testimonial person requested the referee, and I took it as one of the biggest honours I ever had to be asked to do that. I thought it was a great.
Yeah.
That was against the Dandy Dons, Carole.
Yes.
And there was a gentleman player that day who I think was about 92. Nobody actually knew what his real age was. If you remember, I can't remember his name now. There was a bit of folklore, I think, at Pittodrie on his contract. I think he was a lot older than what he really said. However, so small world. So we won't have a heat scratcher this week, Dave, but you'll have an answer for last week's one. Please enlighten us.
Yeah, nobody got this one right, Martin. It was regarding your own club, Peterhead. And it was Peterhead's nickname is the Blue Mogginers. What is a Blue Mogginer? Do any of you guys know?
No.
Martin. It's a reference to the great fishing days on the Buchan coast. Blue Mogginers were the thick blue socks that the fishermen wore going to sea. And that's what it was. Now, whether Peterhead FC wore thick blue socks when they were playing, I know not. But the Blue Mogginers were the blue knitted socks that the fishermen wore when they went to sea in the good old days. And that's what a Blue Mogginer is. Hence the nickname of Peterhead Football Club, the Blue Mogginers.
Yeah, Dave, I think you're right, Dave. You answered. I think maybe, and I'm hastily checking, I think maybe somebody answered me in my personal Twitter page, which no, maybe not. I thought I did see it somewhere, but yeah, it's socks.
There's £10,000 resting on that, Martin.
Now, Charlie, you and us football people, dinner, gamble. Brilliant stuff. Right. We'll go straight on to on this day, Carole. It's 4th of October. Sunday the 4th of October today. But we're going back to Saturday, 4th of October, 1997. I thought I'd pick a year that we can all remember ever so slightly. And by strange coincidence, Dave, it was Scottish Qualifying Cup Day again. But this time it was the biggest round of the competition. It was the quarterfinals. So obviously the participants in the quarterfinals, whoever won their respective games, qualified for the Scottish Cup proper at the time. The results on the day: Devonvale 5, Bucky Thistle 0, Elgin City 0, Lossiemouth 0, Fraserburgh 9, Fort William 0, and Peterhead 0, Huntly 0. And I've got a couple of match reports here. First of all, Peterhead versus Huntly. Honours were even. They must have been sick of the sight of each other because they played in the cup. They had a league game the following Tuesday, and then the replay was only 8 days later. Nothing much to speak about. Referee was Mr. Cassidy from Glasgow, Alan.
Brian Cassidy, yeah.
I normally bemoan the fact, or used to bemoan the fact, that the qualifying cup games, Class 2 referees travelled north, but obviously, as everybody knows, it's further to go from north to south than it is from south to north. And I normally found myself going around Asda on qualifying cup day. However, on this occasion, Devonvale 5, Bucky Thistle 0. Couple of guests from the show got on the score sheet. Charlie Rowley opened the scoring for a Vale. Dode Summers got the second. And yeah, Charlie Rowley got a double, etc. So it was 5-0 on the day. However, there was an interesting incident when Ian Grant from Dufftown
was sent off for an off-the-ball incident by referee Martin Johnston from Duffdown. Now, I actually remember this really, really well because this is back, the viewers maybe want to believe this is in the back of the day when I used to go for haircuts. And I went for a haircut in the morning, and it was Ian Grant's sister-in-law, Julie, who gave me my haircut. And her parting comment as I was paying my bill was, now, didn't I go and book my brother-in-law the day, which I'd forgotten that Ian had been at Derrenville momentarily. And I said, oh, don't worry, I'll no book Ian. And I kept my word. I didn't book him. I sent him straight off. That was a result in that particular one. Elgin City 0, Lossy 0. Again, it was all to play for there. The Broch game 9-0 against Fort William. A bit of a who's who when it comes to the goal scorers. There was a hat-trick by Keith. Now, would that have been Paul or Marino, do you think? Paul Keith, more likely?
More likely Paul Keith, yep. I would imagine. PK.
A certain Ian Murray got a goal. A certain Chris Hunter got 2 goals. Russell McBride got a goal. And one of Fraserborough's finest ever players, Michael Stephen, grabbed a goal as well. And just to add misery to Fort William's day, the 9th goal was an OG by McLean. So it wasn't the best of days for Fort William. In the Highland League, or the Press and Journal Highland League as it was then, there were 2 games. Rothis once again had a day off. It was Brora Rangers 0, Forest Mechanics 1. The scorer, the late scorer in 85 minutes, was one of last week's guests. You've guessed it, Mr. Charlie Brown. So he was winning games way back in 1997. And the remaining game that day, Clachnacudden 5, Wick Academy 2. Now, there was a Richardson hat-trick at Clachnacudden. Would that be Alan Richardson? Is that right?
Alan Richardson, yeah.
Yes, indeed. He helped Clach were up 2-1 at half-time and basically went on the rampage in the second half. Doesn't say if it was at Clach Park. I was going to suggest it was up the hill or down the hill, but it was at the Clach Park, so it was a bit more even. It was a bit of an even service. Alan Freeland, you're smiling, but I had to do a bit of digging. On that very same day, Dundee beat Airdrie by 1-0. 1-0 scoreline. Rogers, I'm thinking Rogers would be the guy, Rogers that played for Peterhead, is now at East Stirling, I think. But referee Alan Freeland sent off former Highland League player Andy Smith for Airdrie. There is no. It was a second cautionable offence according to this. And incidentally, he also booked our club boss Jim McAnally playing for Dundee because of course he played for Baysides at Tannadice Street.
None of these facts will come as a surprise. The fact that I'm sending people off, and that either of those recipients of cards, none of that comes as a surprise.
No. I can't speak so much for Andy Smith, but I certainly know that Jim McAnally is no shrinking violet, that's for sure. Dave, over to you.
Martin, before I speak to Alan, that you mentioned Ian Grant there. Now, it would have come as no surprise to me if it had been his brother Alec you would have sent off, because Alec was one of the toughest characters you ever met, an ex-Marine and as hard as they come.
Yeah, I remember Alec twice got kicked at Brora, once in the shoulder and once in the head. He continued to play, and both Brora players had to go to hospital.
A tough cookie was Alec, yes. Now, Alan Freeland, an amazing CV, Alan, but what I want to concentrate first of all is your love affair with Highland League football. You refereed more than a dozen finals in the Highland League. It must have a very special place in your heart.
It certainly was. And if I take you to the end of my career and my retirement dinner, I made special reference to the fact that the Highland League provided me with a base to go and do what I did in refereeing circles. When you think back of the competition of the teams back in the day, the league was being competed by 3, 4, 5 teams year in, year out. And I can't remember, there was a spell when the league winners were a different team. About 8 or 9 different years, it was a different team. It was a fantastic league to get bedded into, and a fantastic grounding for us. Hard games as well.
Of course, those are the days when it was Peterhead, Elgin, Inverness Thistle, Caledonian, Ross County, all in the same league, and there were special days, Alan.
They were. We used to look forward to it, and whenever we went down into the Scottish Football League clubs, we never got the same hospitality or welcome that you did in the Highland Football League. Everybody was always there for you, down to the simple things of they would offer you a cup of tea when you arrived. Back in the day, you didn't get that when you went to, whether it was Arbroath or Dundee or wherever. Highland Football League looked after their own, and it was special. And there were great games, and the crowds, the supporters were passionate about it, real supporters of their teams. And there were some wonderful moments.
A cup of tea before the game, and maybe something slightly stronger in the boardroom after the game. Another Highland League tradition.
Oh, if you didn't go in, they were affronted, so you felt compelled to go in. And fortunately, there was a very good train system going up and down the Highland League clubs. We were mentioning qualifying cup. We used to call it the qualifying train. So you used to always hope you would get an Inverness team. So you're first on the train and first to start socialising. It was a wonderful time. But yeah, the hospitality from all the clubs, first class.
Have you a favourite ground in the Highland League, Alan?
Oh, there's a good question. I always enjoyed going to Devon Vale. It's such a big open park. And provided the seagulls hadn't been in and you could identify the white ball with all the feathers, it was great. And for some reason, you leave Aberdeen in rain and you just come up over the hill and come down the coast, and it was a lovely day. But I did enjoy refereeing up in Bam. As I say, the big open pitch was wonderful.
And you refereed numerous Highland League Cup finals, Aberdeenshire Cup finals. Any special one you remember amongst those, Alan? I mean, there were some tremendous games.
Yeah, indeed. Well, maybe going back to the qualifying cup final, the very first time I met the late Jim McCluskey, a renowned referee, was the qualifying cup final between Inverness Thistle and Calais. And we took our wives up, but the game ended in a draw, 0-0 if I recall. And so we had to come back up the week after for the replay, and we left the wives behind. And it was just before Christmas, so the Saturday party was better second time around, I've got to say. So that was a special moment, getting your first final like that. There were other ones, Fraserburgh and Cove, that went to extra time and competitive games, but all finals are special, of course.
You mentioned that one between Thistle and Calais. Was it played in Inverness, maybe at Grand Street, or where was it played, Alan?
Yeah, it was at Calais ground in the first game, because then we just about walked down to their social club after the first game, and then it was up at, in fact, sorry, I think it was the opposite way around. Thistle ground, where it was drew, and then Thistle beat them at home 3-0 in the replay. And the social club was still open for us.
I bet. You must have come upon some amazing characters during your time in Highland League football, possibly none more so than the redoubtable Charlie Duncan. Did you ever get on the wrong side of Charlie?
It's how many times you get on the wrong side of Charlie is really the question. Charlie was an interesting character, because once he moved into management and on the touchline, he would often say to you as the referee, you'd shout from the touchline, that was a foul for the opposition. He was trying to get into your head, he was trying to work you. And I remember on one occasion I went across to him and he was giving me a bit of abuse, and I said to him, Charlie, can I ask you not to let everybody else know how bad a game I'm having? Just keep it to yourself to afterwards. And he took that well, rather than trying to go aggressively with him. But yeah, we had the occasional run-in.
I'm going to throw a couple of chairman names to you, Alan. Robbie Warrender and Sandy Stables. Both, again, very strong characters in their own way.
Oh, absolutely. And to say that they were blinded by their club would be an understatement. Mr. Stables, if Keith won, then you were the best. If they got beaten, no matter how good a game you had, there was something wrong. But both were deadly committed to their club and great stalwarts of their clubs.
Are you a favourite? It's Sandy Roy that he didn't like Sandy Stables. He couldn't suffer Sandy Roy whatsoever.
Yeah, I hope Sandy doesn't watch this. It was more than just Sandy Stables.
Compared to these days, Alan, the quality of the pitches, the equipment, the football, there's an awful lot changed in the game, isn't there?
Yeah. The game, right from grassroots up the way, is much faster. You know, the pitches, as you say, are much better maintained. We all remember ploughing through the winter games with mud up to your ankles. But we played games in those days like that because that was just what you might call norm in the winter. Nowadays, I think we would call them off if the pitches were in the same condition. But yeah, we're very fortunate now to have groundsmen that can repair pitches much quicker. But the balls are lighter. I think the players these days are faster. They're a bit fitter. They get advised better on their diet as well as everything else. So it's a modern game. It's fast, furious. And the difference between Highland League and SPFL, 1 and 2, I don't think there's a great difference there.
And I'm just imagining, Alan, you were Aberdeen based. You're still Aberdeen based. Have you refereed on every Highland League ground?
No, unfortunately not. I never got to Fort William, and I never got to Wick. And I know that in many referees last seasons they would ask to be appointed there. I'm old school. If I got an appointment, I accepted it and I did it. Even if another one came in behind it that was maybe better from the Football League, I would say, no, Highland League is who appointed me first. That's where I'll go. So I never went asking for appointments. Is it a regret? It would have been nice. But, there are so many other things that they came my way. I'm not going to complain about missing a ground here or there.
Yeah. If you suffer from vertigo, Charlesworth Park is not the place to be because it drops 8 feet from top to bottom.
So I believe.
Yeah, and it's also sponsored by Old Pulteney, so you would need a driver to go to Wick, Alan.
It sounds like another overnight stay.
Yeah, definitely. A weekend stay at Mackay's Hotel, probably, yeah. And Fort William, well, depends if you're at the shallow end or the deep end. How good swimmer you were.
That's right. Well, I've stayed at Mackay's Hotel up in Wick, but that was on business.
Alan, we'll park the bus there for the moment. It's a delight to have you in the programme. We'll get back to you very shortly. For the moment, thank you for that. And it's over to Carole.
Yes, thank you very much, Dave. So, my turn of the show, Martin. I'm going to get all Anne Robinson on you.
Okay.
A few questions about your career, long and distinguished though it is, and many faceted. So we're going to start off back in our hometown. You grew up in Rothis, as we know. What was your football background, and why did you decide to start getting into refereeing?
Well, Carole, the truth be told, I really didn't have a football background. My father was a pretty hard-working guy. He was a gillie on the River Spey, which is for those who don't know what a gillie is, it's basically a fishing version of a gamekeeper. There was my siblings, who some will be surprised to know I'm actually the youngest of 7 children, and there's 11 years between me and my next sister. So I was brought up almost like an only child. None of my siblings were involved in football. In fact, my brother Charlie still can't understand why I go to football on Saturday. And if anybody ever phones during a game on television during the week, we all, as a unit now, say, "Oh, that'll be Charlie," because he doesn't get a native phone when the fit was on. So I didn't have a family background. I was a horrendous player. If I had maybe a bit of coaching and a bit of learning,
I might have progressed to being rubbish, but I was, it was never going to happen. I had the fortunate situation where I realised at a very early age that I wasn't going to be a footballer. As Alan Freeland will tell you, there's many guys end up progressing to at least the junior ranks, and they should have actually realised then, that they were never going to be football players, but they managed to persevere and brag their way into a team. I did play for the primary school. I played right back for the primary school. I had no idea what I was supposed to do, where I was going to go, and what I was supposed to do, albeit I did know that I had to score at the opposite end. But in a village of 1,300, there's not much else to do other than go and watch football. And when you're playing 20 aside down at the local park, Henbog against Cockinch, as it would be, you can easily hide in a 20 aside team, and of all things else, you can always go in goals, because nobody was ever keen to go in goals. A place like Rothis, with three great football clubs, Rothis Amateurs, who come up through played in the old Speyside Welfare League, and then went into the Elgin District Amateur League. Rothis Decimals, the legendary Rothis Decimals, formed in decimalisation year and in the juniors, and they were formed through a very successful Rothis Amateurs, and then Rothis, the Highland League side itself. And it was tradition to sneak underneath the corrugated iron fence, as it was at the Capardonach end, up the embankment. We were just speaking about the other day, there used to be a bench ran right round the handrail at Rothis. You could actually sit on this bench and lean on the handrail. Right. So I dispute Charlie Brown's claim that Clydebank was the first all-seated stadium in Scotland. I would argue Macbeth Park was the first all-seated. In fact, well, on the basis that everybody in the ground could get a seat, so it was all-seated. Is that what it means? And people used to drink bottles of, amongst other things, they used to also drink bottles of pop, bottles of lemonade, etc. And as a youngster, you'd collect these bottles, present them at the tea hut, and I think it might have been Penelope, the canteen wifey at school, was in the shop. I could be wrong, but you used to present the bottles there. I think you got 2.5 pence a bottle. You had enough for a pie and your own bottle of lemonade. And what could be better? And then a game of football behind the goals for 90 minutes, and then you went home, and your folks would say, if it was a score, I have no idea. I've been eating pies and playing football. So, but one of the big influences to me was the fact that we stayed next door to a certain guy called Davy Clerihew. Oh, yeah. And then 8 doors down was a guy called Kenny Wales, who was, and still is, has legendary status in Rothis. They were real heroes. But to get involved in refereeing, it didn't come from a football background at all. But Rothis did play a huge part in me being a referee, and that's because I was asked to referee a boys' league cup final at McKessick Park, Rothis Rovers against whoever, and there was an incident in the game where I gave an indirect free kick in the box. Alan, you'll have liked this in, so I allowed them to build a wall inside the box and take a free kick and all the rest of it. And then obviously I got told after the game, I think you made a slight mistake there. And that very week there was an advert in the Northern Scot about taking the referee's exam. And I'm saying to myself, well, actually, I've been shouting at refs all these years, and I didn't ken the rules. Maybe should do this, but like everything as a young, you plan to do something, you make a note of it, but you didn't do anything about it. But the following Sunday, Rothis were playing, is it Lesser Deanshoch, Charlie, they call it, the pitch behind Burrabriggs?
That's right.
Lesser Burrabriggs.
Yeah. Lesser Burrabriggs, yeah. Sorry, yeah.
The Rothis amateurs were playing there, and Alan MacLeod, who we spoke about, the manager, hands me the flag and says, you just throw the flag up every time the ball goes out. So I'm doing this, but I'm actually trying to make an effort of it. I'm not just, watching a game and half-hearted. I'm actually putting the flag up. And this guy wanders across to me and says, have you ever thought about taking up refereeing, Maloon? And I said, well, funnily enough, I saw an advert in the paper last week. He says, did you phone? I went, no. He says, well, you'll not get anywhere if you did a phone. This was Murray Campbell, whose son John also became a Highland League referee and stays at Rothis. As I said, he stays at Glenda Malcolm's old house.
Oh, aye.
Carole. So the next thing I did, I went and did the exam, and it was good crack. Guys were good fun, and at the end, Jeff Dugdale, who's probably got a slightly more famous daughter now than he is, Kezia Dugdale. Jeff says now, he says, you can't use the association by coming along and passing your exam and then not taking up refereeing. He says, we really want you to get your teeth into it and make a start. And I was a wee bit reluctant for a start. He says, look, don't worry about it. He says, there is football at RAF Lossy, which I'm glad he explained, because what he first said was, we'd like you to do camp football. And that's not what I thought he meant for a start. So he says, if you go down there, and I don't know if he was winding me up or not, but he says, look, it's very well behaved. If they step out of order, they're putting a charge. So you'll get the best of discipline. So I was going down there and I was doing, RAF stores against air traffic control.
All the section stuff, Martin. Yeah.
That's right. Getting £4 for a privilege, and I actually found I quite enjoyed it. So when the opportunity came to go into the amateurs, I said, well, I've nothing to lose, and that's how I really got started in refereeing. But if it hadn't been for the fact that I didn't ken the laws of the game, and I did that Rothis Rovers game, so it's down to Willie Uni, I have to say, I was always really interested in football. I had a lot of pals who played football. With a really successful school team.
Yeah.
Reeled off the names were Neil Fyvie, Nicky Walker, Gordon Robertson, Derek Thompson, all on the same school team. It was just a fantastic time. Went to all the school games. Never a chance at playing. Didn't even try to do trials, but I went to every game. Of course, it helps when you've got like Malcolm Cowie as a teacher, So it was a great football spirit, and it was very much sort of planted in me at an early age. So that's kind of how in a roundabout way, I took up refereeing.
Good. I know Speyside High School had a fantastic record of players coming out of there. I don't know what it was, something about the water or the whiskey. But not just players. I mean, we've had a lot of referees come from Speyside and Rothis in particular. Why do you think that is, Martin?
Well, I mean, some guys were a bit like me, I'm sure, in respect that they wanted to be involved, and if you're a reasonable level of, we're going to go down the road, you saying if you're a reasonable level of fitness, and then I'm going to name some names, and you're going to go, you sure? Because Rothis had the likes of Robbie Ness, Ennis Shaw, Brian Webster. I'm slightly too young to remember in the late, I'll say the name great because he had a fantastic reputation, Tom Shepherd.
That's my mum's uncle.
Is that right? So there's more DNA there.
We were speaking about him today, actually.
I think his widow just passed away.
She did, yeah.
Would that be right?
2 weeks ago.
She was staying up in Inverness, I believe. I did see that in the paper.
Did a European Cup final.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, wow. And I mean, Alan, you're laughing. I say when they stayed up the street as well. Yeah, I know. There only has 2 streets in Rothis, but the Tom Shepherd's remembered by the Tom Shepherd Trophy, which I don't know if it's still played for, but it used to be the winning team in the Speyside League, the winning team in the Badenoch and Strathspey League, the winning team in the Buchan District League, and the winning team in the Forest and District Welfare League. David?
I played in the first ever cup final for the Tom Shepherd Trophy. Decimals 2, Rothis A 0. I got a winner's medal. And before I opt out, don't forget Adam Marshall and Jimmy Holmes.
Yeah, well, that's my next 2 names I've got here. Adam Marshall, Jimmy Holmes. Adam Marshall very kindly offered me a pair of shorts when he knew I was refereeing. Could have got me, Brian Webster, and probably Ennis Shaw in one leg. produced this khaki shirt, which likes a Sandy Smith. There was actually another guy who refereed in Rothis. He may have well been in the excise, who worked at the distillery, I think, a guy with a beard, but I'm just cannot remember the name. I remember Jimmy Holmes refereeing the famous Rothis 5-a-sides, which used to start at 10 o'clock in the morning and finish about 7, 8 o'clock at night. The team left standing was normally the team that won it. If you get my drift. But I don't know what it is about Speyside. I mean, football referees, obviously Robbie Ness played as a young man, and as did Ennis. Ennis was, nicknamed Tiger Shaw. So these guys obviously saw it as a way of maintaining their connection with football. Some folk choose to stop playing and go down that route. Some people get into coaching, some people get into administration. They chose refereeing. And yeah, Rothis had a great sort of tradition of producing referees, and they all helped each other, and it was good crack going into training. Of course, we would share cars as well. So no, it was good times with these guys, and of course there was Tashi Reid for Dufton as well. He was a late comer to the game, but no, a lot of people on Speyside, as you say. Yeah,
and I mean, you came up through the ranks quite quickly. I mean, what was the various stages, or of your refereeing career? How did it kind of progress through?
Right place, right time, and a shortage of referees is probably the right answer to that. Listen, Carl, everything I've done in life, I didn't really do things half-hearted. If I think it's going to be a half-hearted attempt, Dave will tell you, it doesn't. I mean, we joke about thinking that the show was never going to take off, etc. But we had a kind of good idea. If we got the right mix and the right people on the show, folk would take an interest. It was the same with everything else I've done in life. I want to be a success. I think that's something that was instilled to me by my father, and so I obviously did the amateurs. First ever game, Charlie, was Rothis of Mistodlich versus RAF Kinloss.
All right, okay.
Kinloss had a really good amateur team, and I think the bulk of that team actually stepped up to the juniors within a couple of years.
What sort of year was that then, Martin?
86, 85, around about then.
So, because when I went to Kinloss in 85, we had the junior first team, if you like, and then there was a second team who I think played in probably the Welfare League, if I remember rightly. So I don't know if it is that or whether it's something earlier. I don't know.
No, I would say the bulk of that guys that played in that particular team did go junior, because obviously I went junior myself. So I did a summer in the amateur league.
Yeah.
And then got told, fill in this slip. What's this for? And he said, well, you have to apply to be a referee in the juniors. Was that your case in your day, Alan?
I can't remember applying it. It was all down to the supervisors of the time recommending you.
Yeah.
But you had to go to them and say, I want to be.
Yeah, you had to physically say, I want to be. They couldn't promote you, as it were. So I did that, and my first ever junior game was Forest Thistle versus Caberfay at Roysvale in Forest, beside the academy. I have no recollection what the score or whatever, but I just remember Sandy Dean causing havoc for Caberfay running up and down the park. So that was the juniors. Within 3 months, I was doing junior football. 2 seasons in the juniors. Going into my second season now, I think there was a general shortage of referees to take charge of Highland League youth games. And because I hadn't sat what was called the refresher exam, I couldn't normally be expected to be allowed to take these type of appointments. But the SFA created, and I don't know if I had this in Aberdeen, Alan, but the SFA created what they called a supplementary list. And what we were told was, look, this will be so that you can do youth league games, and at the 11th hour, if there was absolutely no chance of getting a referee at 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, you might find yourself having to do a Highland League game. And myself and Keith Haddon, who stays in Keith, were on the supplementary list and never got a game, but did a couple of youth league games. But we did one refresher exam, and that was us promoted to what was 3A, I think, at that time, Alan. That would have been.
Yeah, correct. 3A and 3Bs, yeah.
3A, a 3A linesman would normally be in the far side out of harm's way. A 3B would be a referee coming down the way and be on the stand side, the more experienced kind of guy. And I think I did 5 or 6 seasons at 3A. But with a lot of good referees in the Murray and Bath Association at that time. Phil Barnett, Keith Haddon,
John Gunn.
John
Gunn?
No, John had gone.
Already gone.
John's gun had been fired. He was already through in Aberdeen at that time. But Stuart Logan, and our name's synonymous with refereeing circles in Maryleshire. So after 5 or 6 seasons at Class 3, and I was kind of feeling I wasn't going to get any further at that point, suddenly out of the blue, I was appointed Class 2, which suddenly you're in amongst the big guys. And it was a great time to be a Class 2 referee, because at that time there was a huge influx of foreign players in Scotland. So what you found was your more prominent Scottish players were now playing reserve football. Reserve football was still played at the ground of the host club. So I refereed at Tannadice and at McDermott Park and at Pittodrie, Aberdeen Rangers at Pittodrie.
What we won?
You actually won 5-1.
Oh,
making his debut was Antti Niemi.
Oh yeah,
goals.
Antti Niemi.
Yeah.
And Newell scored a hat-trick. There you go.
Okay.
There also was a downside at Pittodrie as well, because I had a wee run-in with a certain Colin Woodthorpe and had to get Roy Aitken to remove his foot from the dressing room door. But that's
another story.
But yeah, it was a sudden, rapid rise. But I grabbed it with both hands, because my attitude was, I'm very lucky to be here. Football certainly didn't owe me nothing, so I was going to make the most of it as I went along. So I felt very privileged. I'm going to say something here slightly controversial. I get the impression that some young referees, not all, but some referees, through my experience at Peterhead, think football owes them something. And that's sad to see, because it doesn't. You're long forgotten, I can assure you. But the great thing is, everybody's memories gets worse as they get older, as we know, and retired referees become a lot better because they compare you to the current referees. So I take great privilege in being told, oh, you'd have done a far better job than him. What I do say, well, I couldn't be any worse perhaps, but that kind of I could do a better job. But no, it was a fairly rapid rise to through the ranks.
Good. And big question, did you ever referee at McKessick Park, your hometown?
Obviously, there was Welfare Cup finals and things like that in McKessick, but I suspect you mean, did I ever referee Rothis themselves?
Yeah.
Well, I actually refereed Rothis on 3 occasions. I refereed 3 times and actually ran the line once. The run the line once was by default. I arrived to watch a game, and Bill McCray says, I've never been so pleased to see you. Go and get your gear. The other linesman hasn't turned up. So that maybe doesn't account. You wouldn't normally get games at Rothis if you stayed in Rothis, but obviously I married a Dufton quine and moved up to Dufton. So I was now, according to Sunday Post, M.W. Johnston Dufftown. John Grant would just give me a game thinking that folk for Rothis wouldn't remember that I came for Rothis. First time was Rothis against Forest Mechanics, and I must admit I was really quite nervous about the game, and I concentrated so hard in not being be seen to be biased towards Rothis, because you wouldn't be. They never got any 50-50, even they didn't even get a 60-40 decision. Well, I couldn't go and visit my mother for about 6 months because I really persecuted Rothis on that occasion. The other time I refereed Rothis down at Devonvale, and that was a strange one, because Rothis folk were shouting that the referee was a homer.
So I kind of went to but the most famous one, I suppose, and we've spoken about it in this show before, Dave, was Rothis played Fraserburgh at McKissick Park when Charlie was in charge, and it was 1-0 to the Broch with 5 minutes remaining, and Rothis, I think, broke through for the first and only time in the game. Billy Gordon came out of his box, and I can't remember who took a player doing or he handled the ball. It was one or the other. It was a red card anyway. Billy will be on Twitter as we speak denying this. So he was sent packing, and penalty was scored. And I'm looking at my watch and I'm thinking, there's actually something like 15 seconds to go. There's no way I'm starting the game and then blowing for full time. That would be rather foolish. I'll play maybe 30 seconds and see how it goes. And I played 30 seconds and Rothis went straight up the park and scored a second goal. At which point I'm thinking, what do I do now? To be fair, no reaction for Charlie at all. Brucey Buchan, no, coming off the park, good game, arrest, fine. So I thought, oh, maybe I've got away with that. And then up in the social club after the game, everybody's standing having a drink at the bar, and then walks a certain David Edwards, who then says, tell me now, Martin, how come does our boy, born and bred Rothis, get to referee Rothis versus Fraserburgh? And then I came what Charlie said, because I actually just threw my pint down and I'm out the door. and no, they haven't forgotten. I get reminded about it all the time.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Loads of highlights of your career, Martin. But I mean, what are the main highlights of your refereeing career?
Well, for me, really, Carole, as I say, I just felt really privileged to have been part of the refereeing. It's a family. There's no doubt about it. It's a family. But just to be part of the whole scene, to be involved at a level that a lot of great footballers never achieved. I remember Nicky Walker, I was on the line Aberdeen Hearts. I seemed to get Aberdeen Hearts quite a bit. But I remember coming off at the corner and Nicky kind of slapping me in the shoulder and saying, who'd have thought way back for 1978, 79, that the two guys that would have been in the Premier League in a game would have been him and me. Because Nicky was a great goalkeeper. He wasn't really perceived as being going on to great things. He didn't play for the school select or anything at that time. So I was a bit of a coupon buster. So to be involved in these kind of games was fantastic. But I have to say, probably 1994 was a fantastic year for me, because I, not as a referee, but I ran the line in the North of Scotland Cup final between Forest Mechanics and Cali. Sergio Baltaccia in the Cali dugout, George Cowie in the Forest dugout. Later that year, I ran the line in the qualifying cup final at Borough-Briggs, Keith against Huntly. We'll now mention EHR's horrendous pass back, but Sandy Roy was in the middle for that one, who was a great mentor, albeit he was Aberdeen based, but he was a great mentor. And I did the League Cup final at Lossy. That was Cove Rangers versus Lossy. It was the first time the cup had ever been won on penalties, and a lovely guy was in the middle. I'm sure Alan will agree. Kevin Bissett, super guy, and Kevin obviously had poor health in later years, but what a very calming influence he was on guys like myself, who maybe was a bit nervy and volatile. And also that year I had the privilege of a trip out to Germany versus Switzerland, which I'll never forget. I don't remember much about the whole thing. I really didn't remember much about it, other than standing for the national anthem thinking, there's not many Rothis boys done this. Yeah. One particular game I would have to say, and there's no many of us left, I think, Alan, you'll fall into this category, but I refereed Inverness Cali against Inverness Thistle. And there will come a time when no many people, if anybody, will be able to say that. And that was a great privilege. And that was a late call off. George Simpson was supposed to be refereeing the game, and as I'm coming off at half time, somebody says, away back to Peterhead, Simpson, you're useless. And the groundsman, certain Tommy Cummins, looks at me and winks and says, aye, you're almost as bad as that guy Johnston for Dufton. So no, lots of memories, Carole.
Brilliant. And so finally, you know, you finished. Do you have any regrets at all about calling time on it early?
A wee bit, maybe, in respect to I started up in business for myself, and at the time, the SFA secretary was a gentleman by the name of Jim Farry, and he kind of ruled with a fairly. I'll never forget. I was on the line. Inverness Thistle against East Fife. The referee was Joe Timmins, and Joe said to me before the game, "This could possibly be my last game as a referee in Scotland." So how come? He says, "Well, I've just got a job with the bank, and my boss is a director at Dunfermline Athletic. I thought I'd do the polite thing and write the SFA and say it might be prudent not to appoint me to any Dunfermline games." And Jim Farry had written back to him saying, "Just to get clarity on this, this is a letter of resignation." And that scared me, because at the time I worked for Stuart Milne and I was at Pittodrie on a fairly regular basis. So, you know, in modern day terms, I think the way it is now, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan will tell us, I'm sure if a referee wrote the SFA and said, "Look, I've got a family commitment or a business commitment, I need to take a 6-month or a 10-month sabbatical," I think you cut a wee bit of slack. You might have to work very hard to get back, but you wouldn't just be, you know, cut dry at that point. That wasn't available, so the decision wasn't really there to me. I realised within 6 months that I could have started my business and continued refereeing, but it was what it was. I think the only time you had kind of regrets is when you're watching games on television. You saw the guys lining up in the tunnel. You know, nobody can have any idea what that feels like. That 2-3 minutes, you know, when they're in the tunnel and you're looking around and you're going, "Here we go," and you walk out and it's a wall of sound, you know. Yeah, that was a regret. But I was fortunate. I came back and got a few years later on in the juniors. But you kind of have regrets in life, Carole. You've got to take it as it is, and it points you in a different direction and it gives you opportunities. So initially, maybe yes, but long term, no regrets whatsoever. Had a fantastic time and fantastic memories.
Perfect. Thanks, Martin.
Super.
So just while you speak about referees there, Martin, and Stuart Logan you mentioned, and he was involved in the prank against myself, actually, I think it is 85, when I was at Kinloss and we're playing New Elgin at Pinefield. And this is back in the day when my wife was a manageress at one of the shops in the High Street in Elgin. And it was Valentine's Day on the Saturday, and we're there about to kick off in the centre circle. And Stuart blew his whistle to kick off, and I'm there with me, the other striker, and he was going to pass me the ball. As he blew the whistle, everybody sort of stopped and sort of stepped back a bit, and I was kind of isolated by myself. And then this blonde walks on from the sideline with the anorak on. Okay, gets across to me, takes off the. Oh, I've lost my screen. Can you see my? Takes off the anorak, and there's suspenders and everything, the basque, the whole lot, right in front of me. And she had this little ditty of a rhyme that she read out to me, you know, that the wife had given her to send to me. So that's quite an embarrassing moment. That, and if there's anybody watching this, I don't know if they remember that from those teams. So then she toodled off again, you know. And apparently, my wife had sent down one of the Saturday girls in the car to make sure there was no shenanigans watching from the road, you know. And then we kicked off. So that was Stuart Logan. So I owe him one for that.
Brilliant.
Martin, I'll give a quick.
But you weren't there, were you, Alan?
He was
obviously didn't recognise him when he's new wearing suspenders.
He was blonde with the wig on.
Announcing that we had an allegiance one way or another. Colin Maver, famously of Keith FC, came to work for us at the company. So I wrote and announced that, and they said, "Well, one guy working for the company, no issues." So anyway, one evening, I'm refereeing Fraserburgh against Keith. Maver's playing. He fouls this Fraserburgh player. So there's this big exaggerated, "Come here, I want to talk to you." Gives him the finger wag. And what I said to him is, you better make my tea first thing in the morning. Well, when the report came through from Robbie Harold on my assessment of the game, he said I should have cautioned him. So I got a mark deducted for not cautioning him.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Like lads, well done on everything you've done with Northern Lights. It's been a really entertaining watch. It's a pity that you're stopping now, but I suppose Sky or the BBC or somebody's maybe offering you big money to go elsewhere, are you? And Dave will be filing his transfer request as we speak. But on a serious note, I just have to say it's been really enjoyable to watch and really entertaining hearing some of the great and good for North and North East football, telling various stories and things. And I think also on a more serious note, it's also the shows you've put out have helped quite a lot of people. You know, we've been through some pretty tough months and some dark times, and for a lot of people, maybe if they're furloughed or stuck working at home, it's been a bit of a release for them to watch it, and something a bit more cheerier in what's been quite a challenging time for everyone. And I know as well that you've had the association with Football Memories Scotland and Alzheimer's Scotland, and I think it sort of shows, and it has been shown that for people with memory loss problems, talking about football or listening to people talk about football can make such a difference and can really sort of help them and give them something to get involved in. So I think it's been great what you've been able to do, and it's been great to watch.
Wow, 21,952, the number of viewers we've had in the last 4 months. Carole, that's 1,000 more you can squeeze into Pittodrie.
Oh, haha. It's 21,652 more than squeezed in Pittodrie the other week.
That's true. That's true. I mean, for us, it's an amazing number. I mean, we know folk are maybe dipping in, not listening to the whole 4.25 hours 1 week, but you know, it's an amazing amount of viewers. And it's a very loyal figure, and I think we must thank each and every one of them. It's dipped in and tasted a little bit of Northern Lights. Thanks, each and every one of you. And as for young Mr. Callum Law, he's the young man who's, I suppose, replaced me. He's filled my boots at the Press and Journal. He's a very affable young man. He's well, he says it as it is, Callum. He's a lovely lad, and he's got a very broad accent. He's from Newport Sligo. He's a Huntly fan, but we'll forgive him that. And I wish Callum every success in his journalistic career. If I'm not mistaken, he's the Young Sports Journalist of the Year last year. Many congratulations to Callum. And anything I can do to help the young man in his future career, I'll be delighted to do so.
Well done.
Yeah, well done.
Martin, it's back to you to have a blether with my pal Charlie Charlesworth.
Charlie.
Hello.
Now, you and I differ slightly in respect that I didn't play much football as a youngster because I was hopeless. But you weren't hopeless, but you still didn't play much football as a youngster, really? Would that be right?
I did play, but I would say probably nothing too much to mention about, Martin. You know, my life story, I guess, has kind of affected perhaps how and when I started playing my football seriously, probably is the right way of putting it. I always remember, you know, I was born in Leeds, and I stayed in Leeds in that area, particularly the town centre, until I was sort of 9. Unfortunately, my dad died when I was about 8 and a half, something like that, which obviously had a massive effect on quite a few things. So I probably never got that continuous parenting, if you like, from my dad, so to speak. My mum remarried maybe a year and a half later or something like that, and we actually moved from Leeds to sort of like the area of York, if you like, and they bought a pub. So to go back to the Leeds bit, all I can really remember is playing football, but I was always a fast individual. I was always very quick. So with school, I was always like winning 100 metres or 200 metres, and we always played football. And if I remember rightly, I think I did play for a team called Leeds Celtic, which had an affiliation to Leeds United, but I don't actually think it went anywhere, you know. So obviously when we moved to this pub for sort of 3 or 4 years, which took me up to sort of the age of 14 or something. And during that period, again, I was just playing locally in the little villages because I just sort of moved house and everything else. But I actually became an expert darts player, believe it or not, in the pub. We had the typical, it's a coal mining area. So we had the typical bar with the coal fire under the dartboard and all that sort of stuff. And next door, you had the lovely lounge where couples would go. And I just remember watching Sweeney one night at 10 or 11, and literally the door from the bar was into the living room straight in, and I'm sat there watching the Sweeney, and my dad comes in, or my stepdad comes in and says, "Come on, lad, we need you to come and help the pub team. We're short of players," because I used to come home from school and just throw the darts all the time. So although it's not football related, this is how my life was panning out, if you like. So I said, "Oh no, I can't go through there." And I knew everybody, I knew all the locals, and they're sort of saying, "No, come on." And I wouldn't go, but eventually I did go. So I got changed out in my pajamas and went in. And I played this other pub team, and the game was on a Yorkshire board, which was a doubles. You didn't have a trebles on a Yorkshire board, and I couldn't reach the 20s. So I used to throw for the 19s to get my darts back out. I couldn't reach up to the 20s. So I used to win. I never lost a game against any pub. Now, I think in the beginning, the pub or the player I was going to be playing against felt sorry for me, and they'd probably give me a start, but he would never catch me after that. So for about 3 years, I actually played for the pub when required, but I became a bit of a regular. So I don't know if I'm proud of that or not, but I'll take it anyway. So we moved on from there, and then we moved out the pub and we moved into a little area just outside York at Village. So I've moved again within the space of sort of like 4 or 5 years, and I just played for the Village team, etc. And then it was time for me to do something with my life, and at 17, that's when I joined the RAF. So really, unfortunately, when I joined the RAF and I got posted to, after my basic training, I moved to a station called Binbrook, which is on the Lincolnshire Wolds, where they had Lightning aircraft. For those that can remember those, really fast aircraft, no longer in service. In fact, I think anything I've worked on is probably no longer in service. I'm that old these days. Anyway, so during that age of 17 to 21, 22, I was just really growing up and understanding the world a little bit, and life was far too hectic to be playing football to any serious level, and I wasn't taking it serious. I played for the station and I played locally. There was a bit of talent there. I knew when I look back there was a bit of talent there, but I wasn't looking at extracting it in any shape or form, shall we say. And it wasn't really until I settled down and I got my fitness course, and then I came to Kinloss in '85 and said, I need to change my life around a little bit here. And that's actually when my football probably started in any kind of seriousness, in '85. So my background, it was vague with football. I could always play a little bit. I've never really coached. And Kinloss was probably when it all started.
Of course, RF Kinloss is famous, not just for its football team at that time, but obviously it had what's the correct term, a Navi bar at the ground.
Well, there's a few bars, Martin.
Yeah, but the football team obviously had one, that building beside the football pitch. Where
that was Kinloss House.
Duty free.
Kinloss House, that was, Kinloss House, upstairs at the top. The house is still there.
During my time with Dufton, it was our biggest away crowd that we would take to any particular game. A minibus for the team and 2 busloads for the fans. But RF Kinloss had a very good side at that time, Charlie.
Yeah, we did. We were actually, well, we were relatively successful, certainly within RAF Cups and stuff like that, but we were in the league, the junior league then. Alec McGowan was the manager then. Do you remember Alec from Forest?
I think
player manager.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, so Alec was the manager then. And we had a lot of good players. We had Stevie Ennis, Big Russ Alger in goal. Rest his soul, is left us now, departed us. Eddie London, Bob McCutcheon, Danny McDonald, you know, the list goes on. We did have some strong players, and we're probably mid to top third in the juniors, and that's what obviously when you're Devon side with the Blazer boys back then, as opposed to Devon Vale, Caberfay, all these sort of teams, New Elgin and such like. So yeah, we were quite healthy, and then that team, we would go to the RAF Cups, and the three big teams then around 85, 86, 87 was Kinloss, Whitton and Bryce Norton. So we went to two RAF Cups in 85, and we lost in the final in 85 to Whitton, but beat Bryce in the semi. And then in 86, we beat the other way around, but we actually won the final, and I was fortunate enough to get the winner. And I remember it to this day. It was, in fact, I think it was on the other team, the centre half was Jeff, the RAF lad Jeff, that was at Nairn for a while as a coach. What's his surname now? Anyway, so Bob McCutcheon, ball out to Eddie London, ball into the box, diving header, and that was it, you know. And we came away with a great trophy, and we're proud of that. You know, it was a good squad then.
Now,
and then that's, yeah, sorry, go on. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Danny McDonald. That's Danny McDonald, of course, that we know, who would go on to Inverness Caledonian Thistle.
Indeed.
Spent time with
Yes,
Ross
indeed.
County, etc. And another name
Yeah.
I jotted down, he certainly played occasionally during my time as a referee, Darren McLean. Did he play at that
Darren,
time?
yeah.
Darren
Yeah,
McLean famously went to Liverpool from Inverness Thistle for,
Yeah.
I think it was about 25 grand at the time. It was destined
A lot
to
of money,
get
wasn't
legs.
it? It's a lot of money.
Next thing he popped up playing for RF Kinloss team.
I know Darren well, but I can't think actually during that period where Darren was, whether he was actually down the road then or what, because whether he wasn't at Kinloss even, I can't really remember, but we sort of passed each other quite a bit around that period of time. Yeah. And I noticed his son's been playing for Lossy a couple of years ago, wasn't he? I don't know if you picked up on that. I don't know where he is now, though.
Uh-huh. Yeah, a tremendous player, I have to say.
Yeah, Darren, yeah.
Obviously, if you're putting in decent performances at junior level, there's lots of teams use that as a sort of feeder for them. And another former guest in the show, Big Rob Mulheron, he then gets in touch and you find yourself going to Station Park. So you go from the RAF station to Nairn County Station.
Station, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, I'll go back to my naivety as well with all this, in that, you know, you've talked there, Martin, about your history, about being in this area, knowing everybody, and you know, you're related to all that. I didn't really have that. I didn't really know people as such. You know, coming up here in '85, the Highland League was something I was fully aware of, obviously, but I didn't know people. You know, so every venture I took was quite an adventurous. It was quite an adventure for me just to go to Nairn, and I'm like, yeah, we'll give that a go. You know, and Nairn, you know, there's no misgivings of the fact that Nairn at that time were towards the bottom of the league. So it's probably an ideal step for me to try it out, you know. And if I look back now and what I do know about coaching and that, if I look back to that now, I was naive, I was raw, but I was pretty bloody quick, I suppose you could say, you know. And I'd do a bit of damage, but I'm relying on people like Derek Wright and such like to feed the ball through, and I'm on your shoulder and away I go when I think back. And I was relatively successful, and Rab always says I was his first striker that he signed, you know what I mean? So I don't know to be proud of that or not, we'll see. Well, that was 86, I think.
Aye, but there's some pretty well-known names playing for Nairn at that time, Charlie.
There was, well, we had Billy Nielsen in goal. I'm trying to think now. Dave Penman, Derek Wright, Eddie London. I don't know if people remember him, who came with me from later on from the RAF. He was a tremendous midfielder, was Eddie. Who else did I play up front with? Fraser. Jimmy Wallace came across as well, and Big Kev Gunn. But it just seemed to be, Nairn was obviously the fallout for the Inverness side of things, if you like, you know, when you had your three teams there as well. But I actually think on paper we had a better team than we were showing in the results, but then obviously the results are everything. But really enjoyable, and I found that I felt really honoured to be doing it, if I'm really honest. You know, it was good times, and I quite enjoyed Nairn, if I'm really honest. You
then join a club where I used to love refereeing. I used to think Kings Mills was a fantastic wee stadium. So Titchy Black,
Jock McDonald and what have you, and
get you along.
So it's like, yeah.
But you nearly went to Elgin City, would that be right?
Yes, it was. I was obviously doing something right, and I keep going on this theme that maybe a little bit naive. And you know, when you look at the Inverness teams and Elgin teams, structured, been in the area forever and ever, and I'm trying to sort of infiltrate into this. So it was big steps for me, this. So I actually had to make a decision around Christmas of 87. Pelly was asked if I'd go to Elgin, and Brian Blackwood asked me if I'd go to Thistle. So here I am, a fish out of water, thinking, will I turn left or will I turn right, you know? And obviously being a crab, I thought I better go to Inverness and keep away. You know what I mean? So that was probably the thing that made me go to Inverness as opposed to Elgin. You know, whether it was right or wrong, I'll never know. But that was it. So that was an exciting time. And the reality is, I think I probably struggled more to go from Nairn to Inverness than I did to go from Kinloss to Nairn into that league. You know, I had good days and bad days without a shadow of a doubt. You know.
Now, you mentioned Jock MacDonald there. We've got a bit of an affinity with Jock and Rothis because he was married to an Aberlour girl. Jock stayed at Craig Cottages, I think, whilst he was doing his distillery training. He worked at some of the distilleries in Rothis. A real character. Obviously extreme, you know, one of the most instrumental guys there was in the formation of Inverness Caley Thistle. Without question of doubt. You've got to have a Jock MacDonald story for us.
Well, I haven't. I haven't because I was dipping in and out. I was travelling. I was up and down the road. Other than the fact you were just frightened of him. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I'll ask you a question, and you didn't have to answer this, but you know, we're talking a long time ago. So HMRC, when I be listening, did you get a signing on fee, Charlie, at that time? I don't want to know what it was, but did you get a signing on fee?
Let me have a think about how I answer this. Yes.
Yes, because we've had
expenses.
Maybe three former Inverness Thistle players on here who have all said the same story. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. They were all told by their manager. They all went to their manager and said, "I haven't got my sign-on fee yet." They all were told, "Go and see the chairman," which they duly did. And Jock and the miserable said, "You know what you want in." And I was told to come and ask for my sign-on fee. How much is it? He handed over a wad of cash. And in each of those occasions, Dave, you're my witness, in each of those occasions, there was an extra £50. And this was a wee test. It was a wee test to see how honourable the player was. So the question I'm going to ask is, did you tell Mr. MacDonald that he'd paid you too much?
No, I didn't.
So from that I can only ascertain two things: A, you were dishonest, or B, you didn't count the money in your pocket.
What I will say is, you're probably going to come on to the next question with my injury. You know, I received a strange card, shall we say, in hospital from Scott Byrne, who must have been treasurer, was he?
Yes, indeed. Yep.
That's all I'll say.
Yeah, Scott.
So it wasn't it maybe wasn't at the front end. It was maybe at the back end.
Yeah, Scott, master of the goatee beard, and a real passionate guy he was. So I fully get that. Yeah. So the next question was.
But it's a great. That's some squad. You know, that was. I mean, your Jimmy Calders, David Milroy, that group, Beano, Fraser Taylor, Gary Robertson. It goes on, and Danny MacDonald, and I'm there with these guys, you know. And I don't know, I can't remember if Fraser and Gary were maybe injured, whatever. But I remember seeing them on the bench while me and Danny are maybe leading the line a little bit, or I'm maybe out on the wide right or something. And I'm thinking, this can't be right, you know. This can't be right. So I can only assume they were injured.
super wee ground, great atmosphere there, and a frosty day. Fantastic pitch.
And I always remember the stand, and it was if it was a bad day or it was icy or whatever, and they had a gym under the stand, and you had to do the sit-ups under the far end because that was the lowest bit where obviously everybody stood, you know, was sitting on the seats out there. So you had that much room to do the sit-ups, or you went to the other end where it's a bit higher and you could do your star jumps or whatever. And I always remember that, and it's just a small little gym under the stand.
Yeah, I've got a question I would like to put out to viewers. I'd like to know the answer to this because someone out there will know the answer. But Inverness Thistle, more than often, when they got their team photo taken, they always got it taken in front of the main stand. And right above the tunnel, someone had crafted a cast iron rail, which was 3 thistles with Inverness thistle underneath it. It said Inverness thistle underneath it, and there was 3 cast iron thistles, and they were painted, you know, the green thistle with the red top, etc., in thistle colours.
Mm-hmm.
I am convinced that when the day came and the club was in shutdown and was no more, someone,
Someone's got it.
someone took that home as a trophy, and you know,
Where is it?
And I thought a sort of armistice here in respect that, you know, we didn't want you to hand it or whatever. I just want to know if someone could let us know anonymously, is it taking pride of place in above your mantelpiece? Because that's something. If you look back and our viewers go and look at old photographs of Inverness Thistle, you will see this cast iron piece of work above the thing.
Pennant, whatever it is.
It must be somebody's use. If it's sitting in your garden shed, that's sacrilege. Because
well, the one that surprises me, Martin, is you remember where the bar was that used to go back to the club afterwards in the town centre, and I don't know what it's called or that street's called or whatever. And obviously it's long been left behind, but above the door is a glass pane with the Thistle emblem on it, and I can't believe it's still there.
Is that right? It's still there?
Well, this is not long ago that I saw that. Yeah.
Wow.
So
well, again,
I found that quite intriguing.
Wants to take a photograph of that and send it to our Twitter page.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it.
So that really surprises me.
A massive piece of local history in Inverness. Likewise, I've often wondered, there's bound to be somebody in Inverness with their garden who've got 2 massive concrete footballs for the turnstiles at Telford Street sitting in there. I can just imagine somebody stepping up into their deck and with this fantastic big concrete footballs. It used to be either side of the big sign. It said McRae and Dick. You remember that, guys? Charlie, you touched on it. You obviously did have a fairly serious leg break up at Dingwall. Yeah, can you recollect what happened that day, or?
Yeah, it was. I'd actually come back off my holiday, so that I hadn't been in the team for a week or two. And then we were definitely short on players, and I remember Brian saying you're gonna have to go in, Charlie. So I was up top and we were defending a corner, and we cleared it, and I was towards the centre halfway line, and I got the ball into my feet, and Robbie Williamson was tracking me back, you know, pretty as Robbie did. We'll say no more. That was it. Game over. Yeah. So I remember Murdo, wasn't it, the physio?
Murdo, yes, who famously.
I remember Murdo coming on and
at Parkhead.
Well, Murdo came on.
I didn't mean for dinner, Carol.
I remember Murdo coming on, and you know there was a massive crack when my leg went, and everybody knew it had gone, sort of thing. And Murdo comes on and he's trying to get me on my feet. He says, "Ah, come on, you'll be all right like this." And Ross County lads around me saying, "Murdo, it's done. It's gone. Look at it. It's, you know." So I remember getting carried off, and I've got the photograph actually from the Courier. Actually, it's quite a good photo, and it's Alan McDonald carrying me off with Murdo and the Ross County player, who I can't remember who it is. And then I get taken. It must be the old stand, isn't it, and the old changing rooms. And they put me down in the changing room, and I remember in the corner was this one of those. Remember those old bloke splints where you put it around the leg and you zip it up, and then you inflate it. Well, I don't know where this would be, but it was all covered in cobwebs and everything, and they put it on my leg, straightened my leg out, zipped it up, blew it up. I said, "Oh yeah, that's better." And at that, the zip just went, unravelled, and just smashed my leg on the floor, you know, and it was quite painful, you know. And do you remember the ambulance strike back in '89? If you remember it, there was an ambulance strike, and ironically, it took about an hour to get an ambulance to Dingwall to get me to Rigmore. So yeah, the whole experience wasn't great, and it just affected me from there on, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you had great difficulty, and to be fair, you probably never really recovered from that, Charlie. Although you did have a couple of sort of efforts at making a comeback.
Yeah, well, I was 2 years, and the worrying thing was the leg just never healed, you know, with the Stuckey on and everything like that. Probably went back to work a little bit early, you know. But the new technology then was actually to put the pin through the knee and down the middle of the shin bone. So I had to wait a week for eventually, after saying it's not healing, they had to sort of measure my leg and send off for this pin from London. So that was a week getting made to come back up. So that's what I had him for a year. Then that managed to heal the leg, fortunately, but as you can imagine, plenty of muscle wastage, etc. So I did try and make a comeback in, I think it was 91, and it was Brian McKay then at the time. But I just couldn't do it. You know, it just, everything had evaporated, the speed, the fitness, the strength and all that. So I took a back seat at that point, and I think I played for Kinloss a little bit. And I actually got posted to RAF Whitton down in Cambridgeshire to 100 Squadron, what we call Tatty Tun. And I had my leaving due, and the norm at a leaving due was to get a quake with all your inscription of when you joined. So this was me at the NMSU at Kinloss, 85 to 92. And then my posting got cancelled because my leg still had a few issues. And then soon after, I got the clearance from the medical centre, and I got posted to somewhere else. So I've actually got a quake that's got 85 to 92 July or whatever, and then August 92 to December 92 on the same quake. So I left twice in one go, you know what I mean? Right. And that's when I left Scotland in 92 for about 10 years before I came back to Lossy.
Excellent, Charlie. Well, we'll hear what happened once you left in 1992, 93 onwards. But for now, thanks very much for that. Back to you, Carole.
Right, Mr. Edwards, it's your time for a grilling. A bit of reminiscing. So I hope your memory's all it should be.
Getting on now, Carole.
We're going to start off way back yonder. So it's fair to say that Martin and I are slightly younger than you. And I have to say I'm younger than Martin as well.
Yeah, you have to say, of course.
I have to say that. A wee bit younger. So we grew up in a different era. Martin's already said who his heroes were growing up, Rothis football. Who were your heroes, Dave, and your inspirations as a youngster growing up in Rothis?
Well, I spent most of my time, Carole, down in the park in the playing field. You'll know where it is. Using the wire of the bowling club as a net. Getting folk to hit the ball. No wonder they replaced that. They replaced that wire several times, and most of it was folk. You know, there was goalposts in front, but they were all, you know, in between the goalposts, the old wooden goalpost. That was all hard and bumpy and holes in them and stones. But in front of the bowling green, it was nice and soft grass. I used to get guys to hammer balls at me, and I used to try and save them. But my real hero at that time, growing up as a kid, was a guy called Bobby Clark, the Aberdeen goalkeeper, the great Aberdeen goalkeeper, who celebrated his 75th birthday earlier this week.
I was going to say it was his birthday this week, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody, you know, everybody else was Dennis Law or Jim Baxter or whoever, Ernie Winchester even. But I was Bobby Clark, and he was my hero. He was a great hero. I was a big Dons fan. I still am. And but of course I used to go and watch Rothis, and my first football memory was standing on the steps of what is a station hotel now. It still was, not as palatial as it was then as it is now, but looking across to the drill hall as it was at that time, now the Grant Hall, and seeing the Rothis captain Tommy Martin and the late great Wooly Grant, who later in life became a close friend of mine, with the Highland League Championship, holding it aloft to the crowd in front of the drill hall. And at the time, I was between 5 or 6 years old. And that's my first real memory in football, Carole, was watching Tommy Martin and Wooly Grant with that trophy. And that's a memory that will never leave me. But when I was a kid, I was never away from McKessick Park. My uncle, or my great uncle Geordie, was a groundsman. I think I've told the story before. Geordie was, well, he wasn't, shall we say, the hardest working groundsman. He was a retired postie, and he would cut the grass. In fact, he got the council to cut the grass for him. I did everything else. I lined the pitch, I washed out the dressing rooms, I cleaned the boots, I put up the nets, and Geordie used to give me 6pence a week for doing it, which in old money was 2.5p. And after about 4 months, one of the committee came to me and said, "You're doing a lot of work here, Dave." And I said, "I know that, yes, but I love every minute of it." They said, could we ask you what your Uncle Geordie gives you? And I said, "Yes, he gives me 6pence a week for doing it." And in those days, you could get a bag of chips in a wee bottle at Dewey Cleric Hughes chip shop for 6pence. But the boy said, he says, we're committee meeting last night. We've decided we'll officially make you assistant groundsman and the club will pay you £0.50 a week. So Uncle Jordan can keep his sixpence. We'll pay you £0.50 a week, which was 12.5p. And I got the same £0.50 for my paper round. I was earning £5 bob a week and I was just Archie. I was loaded and loved every minute of it. And that was from the age of 10. I was assistant groundsman at McKessick Park and also ball boy. When the ball went out at McKessick Park, I would bring it back. And of course, I got to go to the away games with the club as well as a sort of mascot. So I was steeped in football at McKessick Park from a very early age.
Brilliant. That's great. And then obviously you pursued a career, well, a calling as a goalkeeper. Now, without being rude, you're quite vertically challenged for a goalkeeper, Dave. You know, I look at our goalkeeper at the moment, Joe Lewis, and I've met Joe a few times, and you know, I barely come up to Joe's navel. However, you're that little bit short. My dad isn't that tall either. So, you know, why goalkeeping?
Yeah, your dad would be about 5'10", I would imagine. Carol, 5'10".
He was before he started shrinking when he got older, but yeah.
I was 5'8" and a wee bit. And I'll tell you a wee story. When I later on I went to Elgin Academy and I was playing football and the school magazine came out. Ennis MacDonald, there was a review of the whole football team, and we'll go back to this later, but it went through all the players and it said, Edwards, great hands for taking and giving, but he lacks those vital inches. What a ribbing I took for that in the school after the school magazine came out, you know. And what he actually meant was I could catch a ball, I could throw it either side, but I was 5'8.5". I wasn't the biggest. But Mac gave me a hard time over it. I gave Mac a hard time over that as well. I took a lot of stick over that. But being a little guy, I was always putting goals. And Martin spoke about these 20-a-side, Henbog, Cockins in the playing field of a Sunday afternoon. And I was the little one that was always putting the goals. At the other end was a real character. We spoke about Adam Marshall, the goalkeeper. His brother was George Marshall.
George Marshall.
George Marshall. Yeah.
George Marshall, nicknamed Cowan. And he was nicknamed after Jimmy Cowan, the great Scottish goalkeeper, because George Marshall was a magnificent goalkeeper. He would dive at folks' feet. He would bring off miraculous saves. But I don't think he ever got a game for any club that I remember. But he was a brilliant goalkeeper. And he was, as I say, he was Adam's brother. And I would watch George at the other end and thinking, God, he's brilliant. You know, and I was just a young kid that was thrown at the deep end at the other end. But I got to learn quite quickly. And my first game in McKessick Park was at the age of 10. And it was a full-size goalposts, 8 foot tall. And I was, at that time, probably 4'10". And we played, I was in primary 5, but I was good enough to be picked for the primary school. So the rest of the guys were primary 6 and 7. I was still in primary 5. And we played West End Primary in McKessick Park. Our headmaster, Ali Wilson, super headmaster. I was putting goals. And the final score that day was Rothis Primary 0, West End Primary 10. And a chap called Dougie Cameron, whose father founded the Elgin Boys League, scored 7 that day, and his pal Ian McIntosh got a hat-trick. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I was at, I told this story as well, I was at Strathspey Thistle for a game, and Dougie lived in Granton. He came up to me and he says, David, do you remember? I said, Douglas, I'll stop you there. Do I remember the day you scored 7 goals past me at McKessick Park? I certainly do, but I don't want to hear about it again. And that was my introduction to football at McKessick Park. And I would say to everybody, if I had a tenner for every goal I let in a long career at McKessick Park, I'd be a very rich man today.
Oh, great memories of McKessick Park. So you went from there, sort of school days, you know, you obviously progressed well, select teams, internationals. I mean, for a wee Rothis loon, 5 foot whatever in the goals, that's a great achievement, surely.
Yes, it was. I went from at the second year, after second year at Rothis, I played for Rothis senior school, secondary school as it was, but after the second year I left to go to Elgin Academy, and I immediately went into what they call the junior A team. which was the under-15 team. We got to the final of the Cock of the North Cup final. I told this story once before as well. We played Huntly in the Cock of the North Cup. Woolley Donald, the former Scotland cricketer, great footballer as well, was playing for Huntly that day. And my pal from school, Ian MacDonald, who went on to play for Dundee and Carlisle and Elgin City, along with myself. Ian was sent off that day by the referee, because all he said was, "Jesus Christ, referee." And the referee sent him off for taking the Lord's name in vain. The referee, the Reverend Hodge. we played him in a replay. We beat them at Elgin, and I'd hurt my leg my arm that time. My reserve keeper went in goal. Neil, what was his name? Can't remember. Neil, and he went in goal. I played outfield and scored a goal in a 2-2 draw, and I think we beat them in penalties to reach the final of the Cock of the North Cup. So those were the happy days. Then I went into the Elgin Academy first 11 team. In 1970, I got to the schoolboys final trial of the schoolboys in Glasgow, and I was told I was the best goalkeeper there, but I was told I was too small. The goalkeeper that year was a guy called Davy McWilliams, who was with Airdrie and went on to play for Rangers. And I came back from that thinking, I want to prove them wrong. So I said to my dad, I said, "Dad, can I go back and do a 6th year at Elgin Academy?" He says, "Why?" I says, "Well, I'd like to emulate you because you are a goalkeeper with Wales schoolboys at under 15 level. I would love to do the same with Scotland." And he let me go back for a 6th year. My mum and dad agreed I could go back to school. I did it, and eventually I got through the trials. But when it came to picking the North goalkeeper, I didn't get in. I couldn't get in because Richard Conzac was in the central area, which was my area for the North trials. It turned out that Billy MacDonald, who played for Clach and Inverness Calais, Billy was the goalkeeper for the North, and Freddie O'Brien, the Fraserburgh goalkeeper, was the goalkeeper for the East. So I couldn't get into the final trial until the Friday of the final trial, the night before the trial. Ennis MacDonald, my PE teacher, phoned me and he said, "Dave, would you like to play in the trials tomorrow?" I said, "Well, I can't because, Conzac's playing for Nairn County. He's in the North team. He's in the Central team." He says, "Well, there is a gap because Freddie O'Brien broke his arm at training last night in Fraserburgh. Would you like to play for the East? You won't know any of the players, but you can play for them and maybe with a bit of luck get in." So we went to Nairn the next morning, Station Park Nairn. The teams all played each other. The East played the North, the East played the West, and the West played the East. And thankfully, I impressed enough to get picked. Of all the 3 goalkeepers, it went to the north of Scotland, north of the Forth against south of the Forth. Again, at Elgin City's ground, I was picked again. It went a final trial, and would you believe they decided they'd have a second final trial. After that, I was picked, and my reserve goalkeeper was a chap called Ian Brown, who was Alan Ruff's understudy at Partick Thistle. I was 5'8" and a wee bit. Big Bruni was 6'2", but I was picked. We played Wales at Cardiff. We beat them 3-2. A story from that day, Carole, was they played the national anthem. It was a miserable, cold, wet day. It was the day that England were playing Wales at Cardiff Arms Park in the rugby. There was 70,000 at that. We'd probably about 200 up the Rhondda Valley at Tonpentry. And I think the weather must have affected the gramophone because they played one national anthem for both teams. It was God Save the Queen. And after about 15 seconds, the needle stuck. And it went round and round and round for about 30 seconds before somebody took it and pulled it right across. And that was my big memory from that day, apart from the fact I let in 2, but we scored 3. And that set us up for the game against England at Airdrie. It was a 3 o'clock kickoff. We went out at 20-3 to get our photograph taken. There wasn't many in the ground, but by 20-4, they held the game up for 40 minutes. There was 18,000 in Broomfield Airdrie. It was full, and it was the only game on in Scotland that day. I think it was May the 10th, 1971, 18,000 in the ground. I walked down the steps from the old little stand at Broomfield. It was a little house at the top of Broomfield. That was the dressing rooms. And I walked down opposite the English goalie, a guy called Terry Geno, who later played for, I think, Southampton and West Brom and played in an English League Cup final. And he was shaking like a leaf, and he was about 6'4". And I thought, well, if he's shaking, shaking like a leaf? Why should I be bothered? Because all this 18,000 are rooting for us. They're rooting for Scotland. So I went out. The first half was all England. They had the wind at England, the wind at their back. I made 4 or 5 pretty good saves. Second half, I never touched the ball. And if Willie Pettigrew hadn't missed 3 sitters, we would have beaten him 3-0. In the end, I didn't let in any goals. I was named man of the match, and we got a 0-0 draw against the old enemy. And that was probably the highlight of my playing career, Carole.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. It's that sounds an amazing coming out with that amount of people there, not expecting it. Must have been just amazing.
Yeah. Another an addendum to that was that I was watched at the game by Aberdeen and Everton, and I got the chance to go and train at Pittodrie for a month. Unfortunately, the letter came in on the Wednesday. I started work in the Clydesdale Bank, which is now the East Bank Hotel in Rothis. I started on the Monday in the bank. The letter came from Pittodrie on the Wednesday, and my mum said, the bank is a job for life, David. You're not going to leave the bank after 2 days to go and kick a ball. And I was little. It would have only been a month's training, but it would have been with my hero, Bobby Clark, and the other goalkeeper at Pittodrie at the time, Ernie McGarr. Both of them Scottish goalkeepers at the time, and what an experience it would have been. And I missed out in October as well. I was working in the bank. I was going to go to Everton on the Monday. I got a phone call on the Friday to say, I'm sorry, son, you can't come and try out to Everton. And I said, could you tell me why? And they said, yeah, we've just sacked our manager, Harry Catterick, and everything he set up has been scrapped. So there it was. I went and sat on my bench with Elgin City for most of a season with Elgin City. There's a thin line between making it and no making it. But to be honest, Carole, I was only 5'8" and a wee bit. I would never have made it full time, but I was agile and I was the best goalkeeper in Scotland at under 18 level, and that meant a lot to me.
Brilliant. You touched on Elgin City there. I was going to ask you, you signed for Elgin City. How did that go down in Rothis?
It didn't go down too well, actually. Well, I was never offered, before that I was never offered a game at Rothis, so I thought, why not? And my PE teacher was the great Elgin coach, Ennis MacDonald. He asked me to sign the S form for Elgin City, and I did it. I don't know if it was the right idea or not, because I spent most of the season sitting on my backside on the bench. Davy Lottie got injured a couple of times. I played a couple of games round about the festive season. My debut was just before Christmas against Lossiemouth at Borough Briggs. Big crowd, about 1,600 that day. We beat them 7-0. The following week, I played at Grant Park. It was slightly different. I think it was New Year's Day, 1971. Lossiemouth were wise to a young 16, 17-year-old goalkeeper in goals. They played Tommy Sanderson, who was a centre half at Lossie. They played Tommy Sanderson up front. I was sitting in the dressing room at 1 o'clock. I was the only one in Grant Park that day. The old dressing room in the corner, not the new one, but the other corner where it's a pie shop in Lossiemouth now, Charlie. I was sitting at 1 o'clock thinking there's a game here at 1:30, but the guys all rolled in about 1:10. It was, of course, Hogmanay the night before. And on the day, Dougal Grant scored an own goal. Ali Shewan scored an own goal. And the other goal was Tommy Sanderson taking me and the ball into the back of the net. With the A.M. Smith from Kinloss, an Englishman, shall we say, allowed it. I said, referee, surely. He says, goal. And I thought, you be. But it finished 3-0 final score, and that happened to be my last game for Elgin City's first team. Played a lot for the under-21s on a Monday night at Borough Briggs under the lights, but that was my final game for Elgin City. Not a memorable one, as it were, but I'm sure the folk at Lossiemouth and Grant Park remember it well.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. And so going back to your hometown team, back to Rothis, who were your teammates at that time when you played at Rothis?
Yeah, I only played a handful of games for Rothis, but before I signed for the Decimals, because my boss in the bank was Bert Gray.
Yeah.
Jimmy Stephen was the manager. Bert was the accountant at the time. Bert was a lovely man, a lovely man, and he was on the the committee. He was vice chairman of the Decimals, and he got me to sign for the Decimals. I played 2 or 3 games for Rothis. My teammates at the time, Sandy Shand was the goalkeeper at Rothis. Jimmy Ritzman was the player manager. Louis Main was a fullback. I remember Louis well. His son, Alan Main, played for Dundee United and St Johnstone, started at Elgin City, or Lossiemouth he started at, and his brother Roy Main played for Forest for many, many years. Louis played fullback. He played for Forest. He played for Lossie. He was a tough cookie. Was Louis Main. Other guys about at the time, I played with them at Elgin. Jimmy DL and Jimmy Carroll came back from Elgin, played for Rothis, and of course local lads as well got a chance on occasion at Rothis. Cally Malcolm, David Clerihew, Jimmy Morrison, big centre forward. 2 things I'll say. The best player to come out of Rothis, many would say Cally Malcolm. Cally was a great player. Cally had a problem with drink later, but he was a great player. But the best player came out of Rothis, no doubt in my mind, Abby Stephen. Fantastic player. Played for Nairn County, Cally. He played for Elgin City. Wonderful, wonderful player. Sadly, I believe Abby's now got Alzheimer's. He married Belle Edwards, I think, Isabel Edwards, sister of Heather Edwards, who was at school with me, and her husband's Richard Forsyth, the benefactor at Rothis. But Abby Stephen was a magnificent player. Magnificent player. He always did the simple thing, and he did it in an unassuming way. Talking about Jimmy Morrison, who once scored 7 goals for the Decimals. Jimmy Morrison. I'll tell you a story. We were playing with Jimmy one day, and he swallowed his false teeth. He did. But as these things happen, time passed. His false teeth also passed, and he appeared at training. He appeared at training 3 nights later wearing the same set of false teeth. Jimmy never lived that one down. But what a player he was. I've not seen Jimmy. He came from Karen, but the day he swallowed his false teeth, that was a wonderful, wonderful day.
Dave, that's a great story. That's like, I can't remember who it is in the Scottish Premier. Their teeth used to fall out when they were shouting. One of the managers. I've got a book, Tales from the Dugout, and there's stories in it about one of the managers who used to shout so much his false teeth used to fly out onto the sort of like asphalt, and he used to just pick them up. Decked and do and stick them back in again. Gritty. You played for the Decies, obviously. I bet you've got fond memories of turning out for the Decies.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful times with Rothis Decimals. I think I must have been, before I moved to Aberdeen and my work, I think I must have been 7, 8 seasons with the Decimals. In the amateurs and then the junior ranks as well. I mean, talking about Ennis Shaw, with 3 centre halves, and they used to swap about a bit with Ronnie Anderson, with Jackie Murray, and Jackie was blind as a bat. You know, bad Jackie was, but and Tiger Shaw, Ennis Shaw was the other centre half, so we took no prisoners. But with Dougie Willits at fullback and Mike Wall playing at fullback as well, we had a really, really good team with Alan Raphael up front, David Clerihew, Cally Malcolm, Big Malcolm McDonald latterly, with some real characters. I remember playing a game in the Scottish Cup with Decimals. We played Dundee Violet, and I made the best save I've ever made in football, Carol. It was at Dundee Violet, a corner came across, this guy volleyed it, and it was going into the top left-hand corner. Now, goalkeepers, as your dad will know, have got a good side
and a bad side.
My good side was my right-hand side, my weak side was my left-hand side. But I was making a great dive for this ball into the top left-hand corner. It took a deflection about 6 yards out, and it was whizzing into the right-hand corner about waist level. Instinctively, and it was pure chance, I raised my heel. The ball hit my heel and went over my head and out for a throw-in the far side. And that's the best, most instinctive save I've ever made. I had a fantastic game that day. We got beat 2-0 by Dundee Violet. But the following week, I was put to Glasgow on a course with the bank, and I came back to McKessick Park the next Saturday. In the dressing room, the team was read out because the committee picked the team. And Bert Gray said to me, he said, David, you were away in the course. I said, yeah, you put me in the course. It's a bank course. You can't play this week because you didn't train it with the boys during the week. I said, you must be joking, Bert. I've just had the game of my life. And you're putting Mike Wall in goal. Mike's a fullback. But Mike Wall did play. Mike Wall did play. They got humped 5 or 6-0, and I was back in the next Saturday. But the Decimals were fantastic days. It was a local team. We used to play in the light blue and a dark blue quarter, and with a fantastic support. The people that they used to go and watch the Decimals, we were getting crowds as good as Rothis were getting, and they were a loyal support. We used to get. I mean, Gordon Grant was our manager. Gordon, rest his soul. Gordon's got Alzheimer's as well. I was at McKeswick Park last season, and he saw me and he says, "I think I know you." And I says, "I know you as well, Gordon." He said, "Did you ever play football?" I said, "Gordon, I used to play for you, and you were a fantastic manager." And his brother Ronnie said, "Well said, Dave. Thanks for that." And Gordon was so full of infectious enthusiasm. And he was a lovely, lovely man. And he is a lovely, lovely man. And hopefully I'll see Gordon at McKeswick one day again soon.
Definitely. Oh, thanks for that, Dave. That's a great reminisce through your playing career. Thank you for that. Brilliant.
Thanks to you, Carole, for asking those questions.
Hi, congratulations, Martin and Dave, getting to the end of the series. Splendid initiative. Thoroughly enjoyed the programmes with a wide range of guests. Some way and others right enough. Never thought I'd hear the likes of great characters from my childhood, Davy Hamilton, Jockey Clark, getting discussed in the airways. Very well done, boys.
Well, 68. The number of guests we've had on the show, Martin, that's absolutely fabulous. Well, hopefully we'll extend that one day. But I've enjoyed each and every one of the shows, and each and every one of those, sober or not, it was wonderful. Now, excluding you here, Carole, I'm thinking about Eddie Copeland. I've loved the company of each and every one of them. And thanks so much for that message, Ian McNeil. Your father was a marvellous footballer. I once saw him nutmeg Chick Young in a charity game I was playing at Victoria Park, a ground he graced on many, many occasions. He was a wonderful man. He knew a footballer when he spotted one. And Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank has got your father to thank for that wonderful career he had in English football. Ian, I know you watch the show, you watch it all the time. It's lovely to have your thoughts on it. Thanks so much, my friend.
Great to have that tribute from Ian. Thank you very much indeed, sir.
Martin, can I show you two things? Can I show you two things?
Certainly.
The Tom Shepherd Trophy Winners' Medal.
Oh,
up in the attic.
1971. Look, can you see?
Brilliant. Brilliant.
And the other thing, I've not worn it for a long time.
Wow.
Scotland 1971.
Can I take that away from you, Dave? You can't take that away from you.
We'll hide them. We'll not show that. We'll not show that.
Well done, Dave.
One day you'll get that in
Well
the
done,
Dave
Dave.
Edwards Hall of Fame at Henbog. Gonna be Cockinch, I can assure you.
One more thing.
Hey.
Oh, he's got a scarf.
I was picking up with the P&J when I retired as part of my retirement thing was a Rothis scarf.
Well, there you go. That's how much I thought of you, Dave. Take it any way you want.
Yeah, pick it up.
Alan, I'm going to concentrate now in your career in Europe at club level. Now, I know for sure we've probably got the numbers wrong at the start of the show when I was doing the introductions, because, I mean, it's like a phone directory you sent us. I obviously understand Dave's sentiment. I was like, how many pages is going to print off here? It's just, and you go through the fixtures and it's like, wow. It's actually like if you made a list of games you went to watch in the TV or the next month, you know, and I highlighted all the ones that I thought are big games. Blue. So there you go. But what I'm going to ask first of all, because our referee backgrounds couldn't be in bigger contrast, did you prepare any differently for European games, other than the fact that you obviously had to pack your passport?
Yes, well, we definitely did, because you were also leading a team, and the referee took great responsibility for being that leader of the team, whether it was 3 or 4 going out into Europe. You were very much the focal point, so the observer, the supervisor who's coming to watch you would direct an awful lot through you as the referee. So you were definitely the front man. So you prepared mentally for that, but also as well, you're going out with teams that you don't really know. So you automatically would do a little bit of a review. If you're doing the second leg, how did the first leg go? Because that has a great bearing on how this match might pan out. And even to the point, well, is there going to be extra time? Is there that possibility? So you've always got to be mindful of that. In the latter days, then you also were made more aware of players who were on cautions, and that has had a big bearing on sometimes on how you manage players to get your message across. So there was different aspects in Europe that you had to manage differently. Not least as well the language barrier. We had foreign players coming into Scotland by that time. Some who pretended didn't understand English. They could certainly swear in English from what I could gather. But when you went abroad, you had to get your personality across more to players.
Now, I think I probably can answer to this, but I'm still going to ask a question. Obviously, you were appointed to games as referee, as assistant referee, and as fourth official. Am I right in saying, the most memorable games must be when you're in the middle, or am I wrong?
No, as a referee, you always wanted to be the man in the middle, just your ego, if nothing else. But some of the greatest matches were when I was fourth official. I was fourth official to Hugh Dallas. And as we all know in refereeing circles in Scotland, if not the top referee ever in Scotland, I would debate that he probably was. And I carried his bags on many a game. I remember on one occasion, we're in Barcelona against Kiev, and I was new to working with Hugh, and he said at halftime, let me know if you see anything that's happening. So diligently, I was taking notes in my head, and at halftime, he said, how's it all going? And I went, well, I think you missed this free kick, that free kick. And that was when I understood where the Hugh Dallas stare was. I just stopped talking. That wasn't really what he was after. But it was fantastic experiences all around. But as a referee, I talked about the extra time. One of my first games, Intertoto Cup abroad in Turkey, late July, early August. It was warm. We kicked off at about 6 o'clock, and the game was on a knife edge. And right in the last minute, there was a penalty claim, and I declined it. And then I realised, that means we're going to go to extra time. I should just have given the penalty. But we had to go through all this extra 30 minutes. And when the fourth official, a local chap, came on at the end of the 90 minutes, he had a bottle of water. And I took a sip, and then I poured all the water over my feet. My feet were so hot, I thought they were going to explode. And he couldn't quite understand that. But great games, great times.
And being fourth official, did that afford you the opportunity to enjoy the occasion slightly more? And I mean that in respect that I know, albeit at very, very minor level, but the level of concentration as an assistant. I mean, I didn't particularly like running the line, purely and simply because I used to come off the park physically and emotionally drained. The level of concentration. People quite didn't realise how fast the game is going. You're trying to watch that line of defence, watch, from the days of John Spencer running 100 miles. I could keep up with John Spencer, but the difference was he had a ball at his feet. I was just carrying a flag, but the level of concentration was phenomenal. And I used to just feel emotionally drained. As a fourth official, did you get the opportunity to be slightly more relaxed? Did you absorb the atmosphere, take everything in a wee bit more?
Well, not really, because the referee expected you to do an awful lot for them. And I joke about carrying the bags. And one trip I picked up all the bags off the carousel, got them to the hotel, and then realized I had an extra bag with us. It had Adidas on it. So there we go. But also, as a fourth official, I was then away to go and do a substitution. Michael McCurry was the referee. And just at that point in time, he went and cautioned the goalkeeper and this number 8. And I then made the substitution, put the board down, went to my book to record the substitution and the cautions, and I realized the number 8 had already been cautioned. So we weren't mic'd up in those days. So I then had to get the assistant referee nearest me, and I was shouting down the line to him, stop the game, stop the game. The home team realized what was happening and were going to make another substitution. Who was coming off? The number 8. And they were doing that before I got Michael across to me. And I was literally holding on to the number 8 by his shirt so he couldn't go down the tunnel. And then Michael realized that, and we dispatched the number 8. So you have to remain fully concentrated. Things happen so quickly.
Yep. Now, we'll come back at a later stage in the show and talk about your international career. And whilst you'll have obviously participated in games with some fantastic international players, but at club level, you've possibly officiated games with some of the world's greatest players. Give me your who's who. Who have you lined up? You know, who's been in front of you on a match day in Europe?
Oh yeah. Well, in Europe or
at club level.
At club level, well, Gattuso of Rangers, you'll maybe remember. I had the pleasure of refereeing him at Ibrox. He put this challenge in. Fortunately, he missed the player. I still cautioned him. It was so wild. And so we got on famously from quite an early stage. But on an international game, we were out. Did he go to Inter or AC Milan? I can't quite remember. And when I went in to check the boots before the game, he saw me and he said, "What the devil," I paraphrase that word, "what the devil are you doing here?" He says, "I left Scotland to get away from you." Yeah, he was a standout. I remember as well once when Scott Booth played for Dortmund, and again he wondered what was I doing out of doing that game. I said, "Well, same as you, a way to participate in a game." Locally, fantastic players, whether the Larsons, the Laudrups, the Boers of this world were great players, and I knew that these foreign international players dealt with referees differently than our local players. They were much more open to converse with you. People like Fernando Rickson would openly converse with you in his own way, but that was his style. And
of course, you've rubbed shoulders with many famous match officials as well. You mentioned Hugh Dallas. Mm-hmm. Who else is at top of your list as far as icons of the refereeing world?
Well, I mentioned earlier on Jim McCluskey, who was a fantastic person as well as a fantastic referee. So laid back. He had a great stamina. I recall once he had a hernia operation, and a week later he was refereeing a League Cup final. But he maintained himself right to the end until his tragic early death. In my era, when I was trying to break through at international level, I was held back because of the quality of referees. Dallas, our own Kalina, John Robotham, Stuart Dougal, Kenny Clark, all really young, excellent referees in their own right. So it was difficult to break through and get a further on. But equally, those guys brought me on as well. Sorry, and allowed. Could you please repeat what you said? I think that's...
No, didn't repeat it.
Correct. My phone's just speaking to me. Yeah, that's right. But all of those guys gave you something as well that helped you in your career. Yep. and you know, at my time, Kalina was the top referee, and you would often look at his performances. I remember he refereed at Celtic Park. I thought he made a mistake, but in how he refereed the mistake, he got away with it. He managed the situation, and it was a great attribute to have.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a wee note here that the next time I get the opportunity to be interviewed, I'm going to say reason why I didn't become Class 1 referee, because I was held back by the standard of and quality of referees in front of me, such as Alan Freeland. Does that get me out of that one?
Correct.
Alan, some fantastic stadiums you've been. Now I'm not an expert on stadium names, so I'm gonna drop club names here: Real Madrid, AC Milan, Barcelona. Where's the best place for atmosphere as far as you're concerned? Because I've been to some of these stadiums, albeit empty.
Yes.
The old guided tour.
Well, the interesting thing about the Real Madrid was against Milan. It wasn't played in Madrid. It was just after Real had to go and play in Seville. At their last home game, the goalkeeper hung on the bar and it broke, and they didn't have a replacement one. So their penalty was to play their next game away from home. So I never got to the Bernabeu.
Oh.
But Milan was a fantastic stadium. It was high. You had to take the lift to get up to the top tier of the stand and to look down. It was a long walk through a long tunnel. And when you're leading the players out, you know, you're in awe of the ones who are coming behind you, and you're just thinking, wow, this is something special. It was a fantastic stadium, and also at Bayern Munich, their older stadium, the Olympic Stadium. When we went to check the pitch in the morning, the 6-yard goal area was totally dug out. It was about 3-4 feet down. And we said, you're never going to get this ready by night. By the time of kickoff, you would never have known. The groundsman said, no problems. Filled it all up, got it all nice and smooth. It was just perfect. But fantastic.
Disappointed though, you've never been at Clagan Park. That's one thing I've got over you, Alan. I have to say, I have refereed at every Highland League ground. As it was. So there's not many folk to get one-upmanship at all in Freeland. Some massive games now. Far too many to mention on here. Apologies if I mentioned the wrong two.
Yeah.
But I've picked out Real Madrid versus Inter Milan.
Yeah. And
AC Milan versus Galatasaray. Are that the big two, or is there any other games you'd like to name drop on?
Yeah, well, I was the one that always sticks in my mind is going out to Pisa. We flew out on the Wednesday for our game on the Thursday, but 9/11 had happened on the Tuesday. And so UEFA hadn't quite got around to cancel the games. So we had flown out to Italy. We landed to get a phone call to say, come back. And we actually went back on the same plane and then went back out the week before. So it's got memories for different reasons. But yeah, the Real Madrid Milan game was great. I remember the crowd were there in abundance when we arrived, an hour and a half, an hour and 3/4 before kickoff. And we got dropped off and we had to do a bit of a walk to get into the stadium. And it was crowded and we all stuck together. And the guys just opened up a little bit in front of me and I carried on walking. They had seen the horse dung on the ground. I didn't. Sweat. So there you go. So I was taking up the rear and got the rear end of the horse stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I remember that game for different reasons as well.
Alan, in earlier days, I don't know if it stopped whilst you are still refereeing, or if indeed it still continues. But a lot of people may not be aware that there is a wee ceremony normally, or there was a wee ceremony post-match normally, where the match officials and both club officials or national officials would come into the room along with the FIFA or UEFA observer, and there would be an official handing over of a gift. Now, it's fair to say this procedure came about since the days in the 60s and the 70s, and I know one particular ex-referee, although I won't name names, but he came from Balfron, and he told me that basically when he arrived, I think it was at Real Madrid, and the first thing they did was they took him to the club shop and said, pick yourself. And the first thing he did was he took a suitcase down and opened the suitcase. And allegedly, that obviously changed latterly. I think there's a pair of brogue shoes involved in that story somehow or other. But when I go there, and from my time, when I went out to Germany, the official handing over gift, obviously Germany, the president of the German FA at the time was a gentleman by the name of Herr Braun. And we all got the same gift, but it was courtesy not to open your gift there. You took it back to your hotel room and opened it, and I produced, you'll like this, a hairdryer. Because Mr. Braun owned a fairly well-known electrical company. Does that still happen? And if it does, or it did in your time, go on and tell us some of your more memorable gifts.
It doesn't happen now, for sure. The contact between the match officials now and the club is very, very limited. Typically, somebody might come into the changing room at the end of the game with a bag with some memorabilia, badge or a pennant, whatever. My very first international appointment was about 3 weeks before the birth of my first child, Sporting Lisbon against Kalmar. And so when I got the call to say if I was available, my very first discussions with Mr. Herbertson, I had to phone home to see if I could get permission to go away. And I was given permission. Now, but then the next day, the game was meant to be Sweden-Kalmar against Sporting, but they swapped the ties. And so it was going to be 2 weeks later, even closer to the birth of my child. Anyway, we get out to Lisbon, because I go. George Smith was the referee, and he told me to pack an empty suitcase in my suitcase. And I said, why? He said, you'll find out. So out we go, and we got asked, how many children do you have? And I said, I don't. And then I got the nudge in the rib. You've got 3. I said, yes, I've got 3. Oh, you're very young to have 3. Ah, yes, triplets. Oh, is it a boy or a girl? I said, yes. So anyway, we got gifts, and without a word of a lie, they kept on offering something. So we got a lycra tracksuit of Sporting Lisbon, which is green and white. So it looks awfully like Celtic. Never wore it. I got teddy bears, we got football boots, we got a bag, and eventually George Smith said, thank you very much, that's enough. And in those days, the home club paid you. And so then he said, but we'll take our money now if you don't mind. So we got paid as well before the game, which is just unheard of now. I mentioned when I was in Izmir, this Turkey game that went extra time. So after the game, we went back to our room, got changed out of our formal gear, and on the bed was a leather jacket. And so I went and knocked on the 2 assistants' door. One was Roddy Cobb, and I said, have you got anything? Yeah, he says, I've got a leather jacket. I said, I don't know if we'll keep these. And then we had a wee confab, and we decided we'll keep them because A, the jacket fitted me, and B, because the home team got beat. So we felt comfortable that, you know, it wasn't going to be seen as a bribe. And so that was the biggest gift per se that I ever got. Real Madrid, for example, will give you a watch. It was a beautiful watch, but that was the standard that a club of Real Madrid would give. So therefore it was also acceptable. But nowadays, it's nothing like that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate that I obviously did some SFA liaison work, etc. And I've got some nice quirky things, like a desktop pen set from the Israeli FA, etc. One of the best things with the Swiss FA was a Swiss Army knife, but had the football emblem on, things that you can't buy in a shop, you know.
No, that's right.
And if the truth be told,
from 1998, we were all kitted out with UEFA gear for the under-17s European, under-18s European Championships. I only had enough guts to wear my UEFA baseball cap this summer during lockdown. I thought it's been long, because if I turned up at training with that, it was probably going to be cutting 4 bits by the time I went back afterwards. So I've only just started wearing that, and I think folk are kind of wandering about in Mythic saying, who's the old guy with the UEFA bonnet? Alan, it's been a fantastic insight to your career. Before we leave it at this stage, I'm just going to ask, put you in a spot. Is there any one particular experience at European club level that sticks with your memory?
Yeah, you have put me on the spot. As I say, the 9/11 experience was like surreal. I also refereed at Parma, and you talk about the Parma ham and the cheese that comes with it. Well, when we got back to the room after the game, there was this joint of ham that was bigger than your suitcase, and we all took them back on the flight up in the hold-all, and I took it to my local Asda, and I got them to carve it up. It was so big, you know. So we talk about gifts. That was a practical one. That's one of the experiences that I recall. Yeah.
I'm awfully glad it wasn't a horse's head. That's all I can say. Alan, really fascinating insight in the European club level, and what an incentive for any. We joke about this if there's any youngsters out there who actually watch the show, but what an incentive for anybody who wants to consider taking up, because you can achieve things at a level far greater than you may ever achieve as a player. There's been some tremendous players that this country has produced, and I haven't done a fraction of what Alan Freeland has achieved. Alan, you must be very proud, but we're very proud that you've been able to have such a distinguished career at European club level, and good on you, and thanks for sharing that memories with us.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure.
Hello. Congratulations on the podcast that you've been having. Well done to Martin and Dave. They've been absolutely fantastic. We hope this isn't going to be the end of the series, but that you can follow on and have another series too, to follow up the excellent work that you've actually started. Well done, boys.
Well, to be voted #1 is absolutely magnificent, Martin. Absolutely magnificent, and I'm sure we shall share this graphite award. You can have it for the first 6 months. I'll have it at my house for the next 6 months. How's about that?
That sounds a great idea, Dave.
And for Raymond Cardno, the president of the Scottish Highland Football League, to wish us all the best, and hopefully look for another season of Northern Lights. That's a great tribute to us. And Raymond, thank you so much for your very kind words. They're greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Raymond. Over to you, Dave.
Charlie, after that horrific leg break up in Dingwall, you thought that was the end of your career. The speed had gone, the maybe part of the heart had gone possibly as well, Charlie. But it wasn't the end of your playing career, because you were moved down south with your work in the RAF, and you took up football again. You moved back from up front and you became a midfielder.
Yeah, believe it or not. Yeah, I just had to remodel myself. We got posted down to Coningsby, back to Lincolnshire again. And as it turned out, we just did a year there, but we bought a house and everything down there, just besides Boston. And I think I can top trump Alan here and say that I played a final at Boston United's ground, so beat that. However, yeah, so I went down the road and I played for the local team down there, which was Fishtoft Village of all places, in the Lincolnshire Junior Leagues. And it's quite strange, really, because obviously I just got to know everybody in the pre-season and all that sort of stuff, and found my feet there, and joined a really good squad that had just been rebuilt. And the local heroes in that league down there at the time was a team called Swinefleet. And they used to win everything every year, apparently, you know. well, we just wiped the floor with everybody that year, and we just won absolutely everything. And like I say, there, one of the finals was actually at Boston United's ground against Swinefleet. We seemed to meet them in all the finals, you know, and we just seemed to beat them every time. So it was just it was a nice year for me, just after everything that had been going on previously. But we played at the Boston United ground, and that was when, if you remember, when Gaza was manager there. So whatever year that was, 93, was it? So yeah, so that was it. But it was a very short period when I got posted out to Germany after that. So we got posted to RF Bruggen, and in those days it was a 3-year tour before you'd come back again. So I went to Germany and did a similar thing, really. Just played for RF Bruggen in all the local forces leagues out there in RF Germany. And we did the same again as a station. We won everything that was on offer that particular, I think that was 94-95 season. And really enjoyed myself in midfield, you know. So I had a couple of years of success, if you like, you know, relative success, and quite enjoyed my time. I do remember one game when we played Randalen, which was a bigger station, but on paper we sort of had the better team, you know, player for player, if you like. Well, we played this game in this, I think this was a semi-final, and no matter what we tried, we just could not break this team down, and we went in at half-time 3-0 down, got the usual roasting, etc., etc., a little bit of a tweak with the tactics, and within 5 minutes of the second half, we were 4-0 down, and we're all getting a bit frustrated, and I just thought, right, sod this, I got a ball in the middle of the park, I thought, somebody's got to change here, and I just hit this thing over the top of the keeper, maybe the same height as you, Davey, I don't know, and hit the crossbar, and it came back out, and our striker went and headed it in, and that became 4-1, and we won 5-4, and I've never seen a game change so much, you know, in 2 halves like that, you know, so never give up, it's probably the message. But yeah, so that was that. 3 years at Bruggen, came back to RAF Lynham in 96 for 18 months, which is down in Wiltshire. Didn't do much football when I got back to there due to my shift pattern. I then went back out to Germany in 97 for 4 years until we came back to Lossy. In that 4 years, I was starting to develop problems in my right knee from a leg break, basically. So I didn't do much football then, you know, and actually snapped my patella tendon in that period. So that was a massive setback as well. So that was me starting to really drop out of football from a playing point of view, other than the section football, which actually Martin alluded to earlier on in the programme when he used to referee on the camp. So that brought me back to Lossy really in 2001, where things just started to slow down in football, just like the local stuff, and then moved on to the coaching really.
What got you into the coaching, Charlie? Because I know you were at the beginning. You were highly influential in setting up the Elgin City youth not academy or youth project.
Yeah, I mean, just prior to that, obviously, back from Germany in 2001. So I put Martin and Colin to Elgin for the youth system, and during that period, that was when Elgin had a lot of local coaches, Brian Dogood, Graham Fraser, and all these type of coaches and whatever. Very local group of coaches. And unfortunately, during that period, when Kenny Black came in and David Robertson and such like, we started to lose that local element as maybe an Aberdeen contingent started to sort of take over. And if you remember, Dave, they started to create the skill seekers, the 19s and the 17s, which actually Martin was a part of. Stuart Knight, Ian Vigers, and all these, Gary Wood, and all that lot. So during that period, I'd been at Elgin as a coach. Left the lads to it, getting coached, what have you. I followed Martin to Cali, and Danny McDonald did a bit of the coaching there. And then the bit you're on about was obviously the Elgin takeover when Kenny Black was sort of ousted, wasn't he? And next day in 2005, I think it was when Graham Tatters pretty much took over, didn't he? So one of his first phone calls was actually to me to see if I would come back to Elgin at that point from Cali to help him with the youth system. And I thought at the time he was just meant take a squad, you know. I says, yeah, I'll do that. He says, no, I need you to help me to resurrect it, because essentially this was around Christmas time, if I recall. And the skill seekers had obviously left with Kenny Black and all that side of it, Brian Winton and what have you. And as I said, the local Moray area of youths was pretty much decimated. So that was that actually was took a lot more effort from myself, especially obviously working on the camp and being detached a lot and stuff. That's a massive effort to get that youth system back off the ground. And I'm quite proud of it in so much obviously as to where it is now, you know. But it took 2 years to get coaches in, get our qualifications, and eventually get the license for Elgin with a check, you know, of however many thousands for the award for getting it. But it was 2 years of really hard work. There was outstanding skill seekers fixtures from the summer going into the new year for the new fixtures for the new year. So I literally I took a week off work and was on the phone all week, phoning guys that I remembered from the first time round to come back and make the squads up. Tats, you know, supported every bit of it. The committee, the chairman, everybody supported the whole thing. It was a lot of work, and it was a 7 day a week job that was, you know, out with your normal work. So after 2 years, I was pretty worn out by then, if I'm honest. So sort of pretty much handed the check over to Tats and sort of handed my resignation in, which set him back a little bit, but he understood. And I kind of walked away on the Saturday, I think it was, over Christmas period. And I had the Lossy job by Wednesday. So that was not intentional. I didn't even know the Lossy job was coming up for grabs. And the first phone call I got then was Tats saying, "What's going on here?" kind of thing, you know. And I just said, "Look, Tats," I says, 2 nights training a week and a game on a Saturday is far different to 7 days a week of trying to run squads going down to the central belt and everything else that went with it and the administration, all that." So yeah, it was a great time. I'm pleased about the Elgin thing. I really was chuffed with that. But I had to move on just because I was just pretty worn out, you know. So that got me to Lossy.
Yeah, funnily enough, I first encountered Graham Tatters when he was manager at Lossymouth.
Yeah.
And I've always found him one of the good guys. He's had a lot of criticism, a lot of folk have slagged him off, but I think he's got a power of work and all his energies into Elgin City, and all credit to him for that.
I've not a bad word to say about Tats. You know, we go back a lot of years anyway. And he's got a good background himself in the football with Bishop Mill and Elgin and Lossy, etc., etc. But he's just 100% behind Elgin. Whenever you drive past that club, Tats' car's there, the gates are open, and he's doing something with his band of merry men, you know, and he's just turned it around. You know, I do remember having, I think it was back in the time when he took over, there's about 250, 300, 350 supporters tops. He says, "We have to double this, really," you know, and I think he's just about got the hospitality's up and running. They've got a massive youth system now, haven't they? And everything else that goes with that now. You know, it's and the team's obviously doing well. The squad's doing extremely well now as well, isn't it? So yeah, great. You know, fully support everything he's done, if I'm really honest. And now they've actually, as you're aware, they've made good inroads with his good friend Dave Allen into getting Leicesterburgh as well for the sort of, sorry, I've got to be careful how you say that. It's not Elgins, it's the community, isn't it? But the effort has gone in from everybody within that sort of area to make it happen, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Martin's going to develop your time at Lossymouth. Maybe we can touch on it just for a start, Charlie.
Yeah.
There's one man really put his heart and soul into Lossymouth as well, and that's Alan McIntosh for the last couple of decades. And of course, his late wife Lorna, a lovely lady with Lorna. And they would have been at the heart of things when you first went to Grant Park, I imagine.
Well, that's right. I remember getting the interview with Alan, and I don't think Royce was there at the time, but the committee, Dave Stewart and such like, and Lorna. And yeah, they've just been there from long before I've been back, you know, and keeping it running. You know, Lossy is a struggling club normally, I think, in terms of the league and where it's at. And I was determined to try and make a difference to this, you know, Lossy town. It needed an inject of enthusiasm, I think. But yes, he's been at the helm for a long time, and now, obviously, as you're aware, he's actually now the chairman, and his son Kevin's taken the secretary's position up, hasn't he? Mm-hmm. But they're struggling for bodies down there, aren't they? As like a lot of clubs, and especially now with everything going on just with the COVID. But I had, in particular, the first time round, I had a great time there with the development of what we tried to achieve, you know, but we'll maybe come back to that later on.
Yeah, Martin will develop that very, very shortly. For the moment, Charlie, thank you so much for that. And it's back to our friend Carole.
Thank you, Dave.
Yes. Thank you for that, Dave. Thanks, Charlie. So, Martin, yes, your turn again. because you've got not one hat as a referee and stuff, you've got a couple of hats. And this time we're going to look at your role with Peterhead, the Blue Toon, as it were. So before you took up refereeing, I believe you were a club secretary. Is that right?
I was maybe one of the youngest secretaries at that time. Well, I'm pretty sure I was one of the youngest secretaries at that time. I was on the committee at Rothis at 17, 18, and a bit naive. You get volunteered for things. So I'm on the social club committee as well. But obviously, I realised a few years later I'm on that because nobody else would go on. But that's one of the huge benefits of that was I was able to work with your grandfather. And I just have to say, I'll never forget the night there was an argument in the bar. The social club had a wee while where you could actually get a burger at like after 10 o'clock for the guy who had been there for quite a while. And Willie had been using this great big flat knife for cutting the baps. And there was an argument gaps, and he took a knife and he slammed it on the bar. And I've never heard a place go so quiet in all my life. And he said, "That's better. Now behave yourselves."
I'm sure there was a swear word thrown in there.
But what respect he had. So it was a great thing for me because it was one of these situations where, you know, you're at a committee meeting and they're going round the houses because nobody wants to be the secretary. And it keeps coming back to you, and you go, "Oh well, okay then, okay, I'll do it." But what came with it was I was also the North of Scotland FA rep, and I was also the Highland League rep, and that was a great education, to be quite honest. And it stood me well for much later in life, because there's some pretty powerful people in the boardrooms at that time, and I was actually there the night at Borough Briggs when I think it was Fraserburgh had proposed it, and Devonvale had seconded it, that the Highland League be split in 2 divisions on merit. And we arrived at the meeting on the night, and it went to the vote, and it was decided by a single vote to remain the way it was. But if the proposing club Fraserburgh and the seconding club Devonvale had turned up to the meeting, the league would have been split in 2. I never thought much of it at the time, but I look back at it, and interestingly, these 2 clubs stayed away that night and didn't cast their vote, and therefore it didn't go through, but it came very close. So yeah, that was a great experience for me, and like I say, it stood me well in later years.
And, you know, it seems to be quite a lot of ex-referees get involved with clubs in the kind of secretarial duties or whatever. Why do you think that is? Is there a reason? Or
Carl, I think it's a bit like the, you know, ex-players becoming referees, ex-referees, you know, suddenly when you're not, now this is a great time to speak about this, you know, Saturday afternoons and no football, you know, and
I know.
We've had the conversation several times. My wife said, "Well, what are you going to do on a Saturday afternoon? Because I want you under my feet here, Ken." I mean, I don't know who comes to the house on a Saturday afternoon, but I'm certainly not welcome. So yeah, I mean, just saw I was down at Dens Park on Tuesday last week, and Jim Thompson. Jim Thompson was there at Dens Park. Davy McDonald at Forest Mechanics, Dennis Bridgeford at Brora. I think probably the list is fairly lengthy, and I think it's, you know, players want to play as long as they can. If they can't play and they're young enough and they've got the aptitude, then maybe want to referee for a while or get involved in coaching or whatever. Maybe the last resort is administration, but yeah, I think you've got to have the desire to, you know, keep your hand in, as it were, for sure.
Yeah. So is that how it became at Dufton? Is that how you kind of?
No.
My town of birth, I have to say.
Well, no. Nay, quite, Carol. I think the term I would use is completely and utterly hoodwinked. Basically, Gordon McIntosh, the local butcher, who's had an association with Dufton Football Club for nearly all his life, I'm probably sure, and our character there at the time, Alan Murray, Dufton lad, and a great stalwart for the club, both as a player and involved as chairman in later years. Asked me, it obviously had been well publicised at the time, I'd stopped refereeing, and usual story, you're getting a knock at the door saying, look, come along and give us a hand. And that's the right thing that any club chairman would be doing. You know, and it's a phrase I use all the time to people. Football people should be involved in football, and I've done that myself. I've seen people have been sat out of football, and I've tried to encourage them to get involved in whatever club I've been involved at the time. So I got asked to go along to a meeting at the Commercial Hotel in Dufton to give some advice and pointers. And an hour and a half later, I was a chairman. So it was a complete job, to be perfectly honest. But again, like always, I always said, you know, you should be ambitious. And the thing that really struck a chord with me was that Dufton actually owned their ground. So here we've got a team playing welfare football, and because Dufton are actually founder members of the old Murray Junior League.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And one of the things that Dufton FC did, for you anoraks out there, is when Rothis Victoria stepped up to join the Highland League, they still had a fixture list to fulfil, and Dufton stepped into the breach and played the Rothis Victoria fixtures and their fixtures. The field teams to out in the late 30s. So
couldn't do that now.
No, absolutely not. No. So there's always been an affinity with junior. So I always said, why are you not playing junior football, guys? You've got no other teams, no other distractions in Dufton. You could be playing junior football. And there was a reluctance to get involved because it was a huge commitment. It certainly was a big commitment. A year later, they played a number, or that summer, they played a number of friendlies against top Murrayshire junior clubs. They played, like say, New Elgin, Isle of Vale, etc. And they won every game, as far as I remember. And suddenly they thought, well, maybe we could do this. So we embarked on a journey to get the ground up to junior standard. I'll never forget, I went down, picked up Jack Whitehead. When he came up to do the inspection, he thought he was coming to see a field in the middle of nowhere with sheep in it, I think. And his exact words as he walked through the gate was, wow. It absolutely, you know, we really went to town. The truth be told, the handrail went round the park, every hole was hand dug, the barrows filled by my wife and pushed out the field by me. I mean, it was a huge thing. We had advertising in the park, the pitch was enclosed, etc. It didn't have the fantastic stand and terracing it has now, but it was a huge effort. Myself and Willie Duncan, who was the manager at the time, we went down to Dalkeith Miners Club, to the Scottish Junior FA AGM, and at a certain point we were invited in to hear the result of our application. I'll never forget, every junior club was represented. There was 165 clubs in the hall, and we walked in, and the chairman, you know, the office bearers were waiting opposite end of the hall, and I just told Willie, as we went in the door, I says, it's a flipping long walk, this, isn't it? He says, the damn longer if they say you're not getting in. But we went in and got a standing ovation when the president announced that we got into the league. So I'm immensely proud of the part you know, I played in that. And the kick I got out of that was the fact that you picked up the Sunday Mail or any of the Sunday papers. Dufton was now listed, you know, and there was a bit of publicity, and we were very ambitious, and you know, we had a great spell for a start. So no, that was a fantastic experience. But no, I was completely hoodwinked before taking up that.
I'm sure a lot of folk have been hoodwinked in the Commercial Hotel in Dufton.
Yeah. But I actually moved away. To work through in Aberdeen, and I left the club, and I think we left the club in a good place, and it's really gone from strength to strength. And Charlie will be testimony to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, great club.
Some of the appointments.
Very well run. Very well run.
Having retired for a second time, and going for more comebacks than status quo. Did you plan getting involved again?
No, that was a chance meeting with Sandy Roy. I was through watching Cooter versus Dufton, funnily enough, and Sandy Roy says, what are you doing through here? And I said, I'm through watching again, because I've come through to stay in Aberdeenshire, and I'm loose on a Saturday, so conversation, I think, led to one thing and another, and then I think I'm turning up at training. He asked me to come back and referee in the amateurs, and I turned up at training on a Tuesday night. He says, "What are you doing here?" I says, "Well, I'm here to train." And he says, "If every amateur referee turned up at training, we wouldn't have enough room in the dressing room." I said, "Well, sorry, Sandy, the two go hand in hand as far as I'm concerned. If I'm going to referee, I'm going to get myself fit and do it properly," which is kind of my sort of tagline. And as I was getting fitter and fitter and fitter, now again, a wee bit of a setup, I think. I don't know, Alan, if you've got any insight to this or no, but I turned up at training this particular Thursday night, and Sandy goes, "Oh, did I not tell you it's a fitness test tonight? Should have told you need to come tonight." And I says, "Well, I'm here now." He says, "Well, but it's a fitness test." I says, "Well, I feel pretty good. I'm definitely the wrong side of 40, but I've never failed a fitness test ever. I'll give it a go, just for no pressure." So long story short, I passed the fitness test and then I get a phone call on the Friday night. "Can you go and do Cruden Bay versus Burghead Thistle?" And suddenly, I'm back in the list. And I had a great 2-3 years, but that's down to the fact that the Aberdeen Association appointed a guy, Mel Edwards, to take the training. And his training was something like I'd never seen. Is it a sprint coach, long distance coach?
Yeah, he used to run marathons and all the rest.
And you maybe have heard his son Carole, is Miles Edwards.
Oh yeah, I know Miles.
The very appropriately named Miles Edwards, long distance.
Yeah, he's got the Edwards Foundation thing.
Mel was just unbelievable. Now I was never one of these guys that run around the track at training and say, "Hi Alan, how's your game on Saturday?" I couldn't speak to anybody because I'm breathing through my backside at this point. But without a doubt, Mel Edwards got another 2 seasons out of me. And my attitude was, I knew there would be criticism, maybe not voiced at me, but I knew there'd be criticism of, here's a guy, he's had his career, and then he's taken up a junior place. So what I wasn't prepared to do was have that directed me if I wasn't doing the job properly. So, yeah. And I've always maintained, I was never a great referee, but I was a fit referee. And it's kind of difficult to get things wrong when it's right in front of you, as opposed to 30 yards away.
Yeah.
So that's how I got sort of back into the junior refereeing again. And then I had this again. It's a setup. I was told at 46 I had to retire, so I retired. And then the SFA decided a year later to relax it, and you didn't have to. So unfair dismissal in my book, like. No, forced to retire at 46, and in the minute you retire, they put the age up.
No lucky. So working for the Dons.
Aye, that was a brief interlude in my life, in respect that I'd been at Formartine United. Again, long story short, conversation with Ian Skeen, ex-referee, was involved with Formartine United, and I'd been refereeing Formartine in the juniors, and Ian offered to take my bag out the car for me, which I thought was very strange. But he wanted to get me on for a wee conversation. I know you're retiring at the end of the season. What you planning on doing? I said, "Well, I'll stop you there. I'm not interested in the junior thing at all. Done that with Dufton, fantastic experience, but I'm not going through all that again." He says, "What if it wasn't the juniors?" And I said, "Well, that can only mean one thing, Ian." "What's that?" I said, "Are you guys thinking about the Highland League?" So I had a brief conversation with Arthur Cadger through in his office. Within 5 minutes, I decided, this is going to be a great adventure. So I agreed to do that. So I prepared the paper and the presentation to the Highland League to get into Highland League. And that was a wonderful night as well, for all 3 clubs that got into Highland League. And again, fantastic to be part of that. But I decided in 2016 that for one reason or another, I felt I'd done sufficient at the club. It was time to move on. So I left at Christmas, and I was in limbo. It was one of these where you make a decision and suddenly like, what am I going to do with myself on a Saturday? So I was going to various junior grounds at certain places I had heard of but never been. I was speaking to Willie Garner about the show last week, going to like Danny Pace and so on. And out the blue, I get a phone call from George Yule, and George gives me the opportunity to represent initially Aberdeen on the Aberdeenshire FA, attend the meetings, which is probably more a bugbear for a big club like Aberdeen and anything else. So it was a nice fix. And George actually got me involved on a Saturday afternoon where I would be based in the boardroom. George was pulled from pillar to post on a match day, obviously trying to get in front of as many people as possible. So basically my job was, I'd be told, right, this Saturday, Paul Hartley will be arriving from Dundee. So he knows to come and ask for yourself and just, keep a guy company, etc., and show where you get a seat. And it was nice to get, you're sitting with the director. It was quite a surreal moment. I'm waving up at Davy Clerihew, who was my hero, and suddenly I'm sitting with the directors doing in front of him. And it was lovely, and it was, I really appreciate, the opportunity for George, but I kind of knew myself that I wasn't probably going to continue with that the following season. And then just out of the blue, I get a phone call from Harry Fraser at Peterhead.
And that's what I was going to move on to next. So how did the move to Peterhead come about then?
Well, Harry Fraser phones me up. A lot of people know Harry from the catering company, and he was a director at Peterhead, and he phoned me up, almost scolding me for saying, "You never told me you were working at Aberdeen." And I said, well, no, working would kind of suggest that there's a transaction. Because I said, I do a wee volunteer job on a Saturday. He said, all right, well, we're looking for somebody to come in as general manager. And I said, oh, Harry, you couldn't do the Peterhead job part-time. Oh, no. He says, this isn't a part-time job, it's a full-time job. But also I was aware that Natty Porter had a similar role at Peterhead, and Nat is an absolute legend at Peterhead. There's absolutely no way I was going to, take on the role after Natty. I'm conscious of the fact that I didn't belong to Peterhead, didn't know people at Peterhead really, so it was going to be a difficult transaction. But as it turned out, Natty was looking to maintain an involvement with the club, but with a lesser role, lesser hours, and he was going to move across and be the community liaison officer, as he's titled now, and I would come in. And I have got to say that the board at Peterhead have been phenomenal. Roger Morrison, I only wish I'd met Roger Morrison. I knew Roger to speak to, but what a guy, what an inspiration, what hands-on. He's 71, maybe 72 this year, hardest working man at the club. He's there, it could be a bloody pain in the backside sometimes, and I'm sure he doesn't mind me saying that, but, fantastic inspiration. And I love working for him, love working with the club. Difficult times just now, Carole, really difficult times.
Very difficult.
But the community at Peterhead, and I'm not just, this is not a sales pitch, wonderful, wonderful people from the day I arrived. I thought, they're going to come in. There was a few folk come in disappointed to see Martin Johnson and realised it wasn't the Martin Johnson that used to score goals for them. But once that was established, people have been really helpful, and Peterhead folk are really passionate about their football club, and that's never been more evident than now during recent times. So obviously I'm as ambitious as ever. I cannot take any responsibility for what happens across that white line, but in this side of it, what we've tried to achieve at Peterhead is a facility that's open almost 365 days a year. I know you've been up, you were up last season, pre-season.
Yeah, we're up,
we've now got a fantastic coffee shop. It's not breaking any records because it's obviously feeling the pinch with the current restrictions, etc. We've got a new office, etc. We're forward thinking. We've just put in the video streaming equipment, which is a considerable amount of money, and very forward thinking club. And they really do deserve a wee bit of success on the park as well. And I love working with Jim McInally. He can be hard work at times too, by his own admission. He's obviously had a tough upbringing, Jim McLean and Brian Clough, so maybe a wee bit of that's rubbed off on him. But no, love Peterhead Football Club to bits, and absolutely no regrets, and I hope I'm there for a long time yet.
Yeah, well, I hope you are, and I hope the club is as well, and I hope all Highland League clubs can come through this difficult time unscathed. There's obviously a lot of challenges ahead of them, but it would be a shame to see any of them, floundering because of what's happening, and to my mind, in my opinion, pretty needlessly, because I think if you can get 1,000 folk in a ground, you know, spread out, there's no issue that, but that's my
opinion. I'll tell you.
That's my opinion just now. So,
step up in that soapbox. We'll never get finished. I'm conscious of the
correct.
fact time is rolling on.
Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to say many congratulations to both Dave and Martin for what is a fantastic podcast. The Northern Lights is always a great listen, and I'm an avid listener of the show, and I really enjoy what you both do. It's great to see two pioneers of Northern football really putting across their views and their opinions. So congratulations, guys. Keep up the great work, and I hope to hear many podcasts again soon. Take care.
Oh, 86, Martin. Unbelievable, unbelievable. You've shortened the summer, and we're also shortening the winter as we speak.
It's actually 80. It's actually 80, Dave. 80 plus.
80.
Yeah.
Give or take 6 hours between friends.
But we're still counting. We're not finished yet.
You've done a magnificent job, Martin. You and your editing skills have got better as the weeks go on and the months go on. Well done, you. And Ali Beg. Ali, thank you so much for your kind words. We last met at Pittodrie Stadium when you launched your new book, or at that time your new book, Beg to Differ. I had a great pleasure of meeting you for the first time that day, and Jim Craig, the former Celtic Lisbon Lion. It was a wonderful day. It was lovely to meet you, and I hope you enjoy your new role in Austria.
Back to you, Dave.
Thank you very much. Alan, we spoke earlier, you spoke with Martin about your European matches. Let's look at some of the international matches you've officiated at. It's very special being an international because, as Martin said earlier on, you've got the national anthems. It's a very proud moment for you, along with your 3 other Scottish officials leading out the teams.
Absolutely, that's right. And even though you'll be in the middle of 2 teams and it's their national anthems, some of them are really rendering it, and it gets you going. You can understand how passions build up within players. Internationals are different to club games abroad. The rigmarole, the pageantry of it all is slightly different. And you can then obviously be on the pitch with players at the top level of all these countries. So many players of a high level.
Now, we're very passionate about our international team in Scotland, the Tartan Army. They're famous for the support they give, but I take it every other country has got their same Tartan Army, as it were.
Oh, without a doubt. We often hear about the Hampden Roar and what Scotland needs behind them and so forth, but I was at an observer at an international game in Ukraine against Turkey not so long ago, and when you heard the noise and the passion of the fans for their country, it's so much greater than it is, in my view, than for their club. It is their blood, that they're cheering on, and it's got a different atmosphere altogether.
You must have shared that hallowed turf, wherever it was, Alan, with many of the game's best ever players. Any spring to mind that you look back on with admiration?
Well, there was nowadays the Ronaldos weren't quite playing in my day, so there wasn't the same household names that I could mention. But one trip that I did do for an international game was Norway and Portugal, and Andrew Waddle was the referee. I was an assistant referee, the senior one. Andrew Waddle was called Dr. Death, as you may well know, because he was a pathologist. But he had a tendency to overreact. And so just before half time, one of the players bumped into him and he started to limp. And so at half time, he told me, "Get ready, I don't think I'll be able to carry on." Well, 5 minutes later, he was right as rain. But I was now up to high do, a way to go out to referee an international game that I wasn't expecting to. So it was a slightly unusual experience for me there.
And of course, you refereed at all levels of international football, Alan. And I take it some of the most exciting must have been some of the youth tournaments you officiated at, to see the stars of the future coming through.
Correct. And my first introduction was going along with the Scotland team, youth team, to Toulon. It was a renowned tournament where, as you say, David, many of the young players then became top stars. It was a great tournament. You got to mix with the teams quite well, quite a lot as well, rather than just going in and out for games. So that was fantastic. The beauty about tournaments were you could unpack your case. For international European games, you would fly in day one to the game day two, you're flying out day three early morning. For tournaments, you would be settled in a place. We were in just outside Lisbon on one tournament, and I remember one of the people looking after us took us back to his house. And he used to be a bullfighter, but he was the guy that was at the front of the 5 or 6 guys behind him, and he would literally catch the bull head on. Now the bull had a caps over his horns, but he was the guy that got hit first, then the second one, then the third one. It was a fantastic experience from him, and by going on these mini tournaments, you saw a little bit more about the country, a little bit more of the culture, and that was quite good. In terms of the players, you tended to find that they were a bit more free, that they would be more expressive in what they're doing, because they were trying to impress their managers to become the next stars. And from that point of view, the pace of the game used to be much faster than you might find in, normal international matches, albeit they were obviously of high quality. So there was different challenges there as well, but it was a great, again, upbringing for me in terms of my refereeing experience, to be out on these pitches with international players, whether youth, under 21s, because you knew that you were developing as well as they were.
Alan, you've hung up your whistle a year or two ago now. Let's look at the present day. How do you think you would have coped with a phenomenon that we call VAR?
Oh, that's a good question. The beauty about the new generation is they're coming in and living with it. So that's fine. I think I would have found it very difficult. The laws of the game state something along the lines that the referee's decision is final. That's now out the door now. It is somebody watching a TV where the decision is final. And I've said for a number of years now, we keep on tinkering with the laws of the game, that we're losing sight of as to what we're trying to achieve. Handball, what is handball now? It used to always be a direct movement of the hand towards the ball. I don't think that applies now. It's altogether different. VAR is taking away the spontaneity of the decision, the errors, because we like to talk about things after the game. Now the game is very clinical. I think we're still talking about the game, but for the wrong reasons, because VAR, I don't think, is getting things right, even with the reviews that are going on. And so we're going to have to change English football, albeit at the weekend, 2 classic examples of where VAR is not working. Simple as that.
I saw an advert, just something on the news tonight, I think, Alan, with I think they're looking to relax that rule a little bit from this point on in the Premier League, aren't they? I think the rule's going to stay the same, but in a more relaxed decision from the referee, shall we say.
Sure. Once laws are made, it's then how we interpret them. That's the issue. And the guidance that's then put out to all the referees, it makes it more difficult for them, in my view. I think we need to clean it up, make it a bit simpler, a bit more instantaneous, to allow the players to understand what's going to be expected of the referee in decision making.
And of course, you're
Agreed.
still involved in the game, Alan. We met at Cove Rangers a month or two ago now, wasn't it? Maybe 6-7 months ago. You're still doing what we used to call supervising referees?
Yeah, well, we're called observers now.
Observer.
Yes, rather than supervising our team, observers, and even more so now, I would say we're coaches. So as well as observing a game, I've got 3 referees who I coach throughout the season. They're all grade 1 referees. And so we try to make sure that we're getting a consistency of performance. When a referee gets downgraded in a mark, we try to have to lift them up and make sure that they go forward and eradicate. But observing is a very, very important part of refereeing and indeed football, because it makes sure that the referees go out and do the right thing at all the games so that the teams get the most consistent that we can be in terms of decision making.
Thank you for that great insight, Alan. Appreciate it greatly.
No problems at all.
Hi, this is Richard McBrearty. I'm Project Director of Football Memories Scotland. I just want to say a big thank you to Northern Lights for all the fantastic work that you've been doing. We're really proud to be associated with you guys, and we know, particularly this time with the pandemic, it's so important for people to stay connected, and we really know the work that you guys are doing will have a positive impact in the lives of many thousands of people. So again, well done guys, and fantastic work.
Well, 914 is the average viewing figures for each and every one of our 24 programmes. Magnificent, magnificent achievement. And when we first started out, we thought we might get 30 or 40 folk just nipping in to have a wee listen to what we are blethering about, Martin. And most of the credit for your editing skills and for your idea goes to you, Martin Johnson. Very well done indeed.
No, very much a team effort, David.
And thanks to Richard McBrearty of Football Memories Scotland for your kind words also. We know that Alzheimer's Scotland and Football Memories Scotland are on board with us, and we know that some of the people that we talk about, it might just jog a memory in somebody who has a touch of Alzheimer's, and if we can help, we're absolutely delighted to have done so. Hopefully we can do so again in the future.
Here, here. Over to you, Carole.
Right, Mr. Edwards. This is your second shotty at your second career, or it could be your first career. So you, like me, worked in Clydesdale Bank. I didn't start in Rothis, I actually started in Aberlour, although I did have my interview in Rothis. But you know, you had a career in the banking industry away from football, so where did sports journalism come into there?
It's a strange one, Carole, because I had 10 years in the Clydesdale Bank, and I left when I was working in Aberdeen and joined the Building Society. I joined the Leicester Building Society in Aberdeen, went to Glasgow, then went to Helensburgh, and then came up to Banff and Turriff. Then I went to Wick and Thurso, and then reverted back to Elgin, Buckie and Forest. So I saw quite a bit of the country during my time. Never thought I would be made redundant, but I was made redundant after 17 years in the Building Society. A week after buying the house I live in at the moment, actually. So it was hard times. I was out of a job for a year, and it was hard times because I hadn't sold my house in Caithness. I was sitting with 2 mortgages and a very big bridging loan. And after 3 months, the 5% mortgage of the Building Society became a 14.5% mortgage. And to be honest, for a year, it was beans on toast or a boiled egg. It was all we could afford. And that's no joking matter. That's the way it was. But out of the bad times, you appreciate the good times. And in between those times, I managed to help out Devon Vale for a wee while, 1 or 2 things. And Fraserburgh, I got a job as a commercial manager or marketing manager, they called it. And thanks to Jimmy Adams, the chairman at Fraserburgh, I was able to help them for a spell as well, and I was very, very grateful for that. But I actually got into the broadcasting. I was listening to Murray Firth Radio one day, and there's a guy called Mike Edwards who went on to be head of news at STV. Mike was the sportsman at the time, and at 7:30, 8:30, he would come on the sports news, and he would say things like, "Did you see that game last night? what do you think of that goal? Wasn't that a magnificent goal? Or what do you think of that miss? Give us a phone. Tell me what you think. So I phoned him once, and he phoned me back, and he says, look, I think you've got a good voice for radio. You've got a face for radio also.
You beat me there. You beat me there.
You've got a good voice for radio. Can you do a game for me on Saturday? I said, what does it mean? He said, well, just go to the game, phone us through your match report, a couple of minutes match report after the game, and we'll put it on air. So I did that, and did it once, and it was the late, great Jeff Jones was doing the show on the Saturday night. Great man, Jeff Jones, loved him to pieces, former chemistry teacher at Bucky High School. Did the show with Jeff for many, many years. And I used to link in to the programme, and I did it for 12 years at Murrayforth Radio. Never got paid wages. I once got a £5 cheque sent to me for expenses for going from Wick, where I was working, to East Fife to do a Scottish Cup game. They sent me a cheque for a £5. I wish I'd framed it rather than spending it. It was the only time in 12 years I ever got expenses. But I was working, I could afford it, and it was a great, great pleasure. But thanks to Mike Edwards, it was him that got me into it, and I've been ever indebted to Mike ever since.
And you know, airwaves, you've been radio, TV. How did that come about?
Yeah, it's the radio was, as I say, it was Mike Edwards that got me into that. The TV, it was when I was working for the Press and Journal. When I was out of a job, I saw a job in the Press and Journal. I was a sports journalist, and I thought, well, I can speak about it because I've done it on the radio for 12 years. Don't know if I can write about it. And to be honest, I wasn't nearly as comfortable writing about sport or football, as I knew, than I was speaking it. I went to the interview with Jim Dolan, the sports editor, and and Kay Drummond, who was a deputy editor at the time.
Yep.
And to be honest, Jim had a radio background, and he didn't want anybody else working for him in a radio background, so Jim didn't want me to work for him, but Kay did. She was at Elgin Academy when I was at Elgin Academy, and she remembers me from getting my Schoolboy International cap on the stage along with Ian McDonald. She was in the first year, I was in the sixth year. She remembered me from those days, and she wanted me to work for her, and I did. And so I worked for her, and Derek Tucker was the editor, and I did that for 17 years, and thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great. I think I said to Martin, I once did an international match. It was when Scotland got beat 4-0 at the National Stadium in Wales. It was a nightmare. I relayed this story as well. It was that after the game, all the players, Scottish players, walked onto the bus, went past me and all the other Scottish journalists. Nobody was going to speak. The only one that spoke to me was Bertie Boats. I'm not very sure what he was speaking about anyway. Anyway, they all went on, and I was told I had to get a Scottish player, and all the Scottish journalists had left at this time. And the last one out of the ground, walking past me to the bus, because the bus was inside the stadium, was Stephen Presley. And I shouted at him, and I said, Stephen, Dave Edwards, P&J, I need to speak to you. I did a feature on your granddad a couple of weeks ago. And he got off the bus and he came back and he said, you're the guy that did a feature on my granddad about him still playing golf into his mid-80s. And I said, yeah. He said, Granddad sent it down to me. I really, really enjoyed it. I'll speak to you. What do you want to know? So I was very, very lucky. That was my only taste of international football. Stephen Presley bailed me out because I'd done a story about his 80-odd-year-old granddad playing golf every day in Fraserburgh. So I was very, very lucky in my journalism career. I did it for 17 years, Carol. One day that springs to mind was a day I was working for Murrayforth Radio, and I was living in White Hills at the time, and I went to a Fraserburgh game. And would you believe the game was cancelled at about 5-3? Tried to get the game on, the referee postponed it at 5-3, so I thought, what will I do now? Lossiemouth are playing that day, Lossiemouth are playing Bucky. Boot it to Grant Park. I got to Grant Park, and the game was abandoned at half-time. Lorna gave me a cup of tea and she said, Bert, I'm not here, shortbread, you're not going to see any fit for the day. And I thought, Bucky's playing at home, I'll maybe get to the Bucky game. I got to Bucky with 5 minutes to go. and saw the last 5 minutes of a 0-0 draw at Victoria Park. And somebody found out and put it in the Sunday Post the next day. Dave does something like a 314-mile round trip to see 5 minutes of Pitba, 8 goals. But I made it into the Sunday Post. It was wonderful. But it was a long association. And somebody once said to me, and I took it as a great compliment. They said, "Dave, you can write shite as well as speak it." Thank you for that. I will take that as a great compliment. You're very kind.
So what's your most memorable moment on air, being either radio or TV? What's the one that sticks in your mind?
There's two. I was at Carle's Telford Street one night. It was a cold, freezing, snowy night, and it was the round that would have got Carle into the quarter-final of the Scottish Cup. And they did actually get there. I was around before that. It was around the last 32. They were playing Airdrie, and it was 2-2, and the game went to extra time. And I phoned Murray Firth Radio. It's about 9:30, 9:45 at night. I said, "Look, it's gone to extra time. Do you want me to come in with a wee memory jog at half time?" I said, "Yeah, come back and let us know how it's going." So I did that, and then at full time I phoned them and I said, "Look, this game's going to go to penalties. Do you want the penalties?" And the guy who was doing the programme was Jimmy Gellertley was his name. And
Jim Gellertley, yeah.
Jim Gellertley, and he went on. I think he was in North Sound, and his dad was chairman at Dundee FC at the time. Jim Gellertley.
Oh, right, okay.
I remember Jimmy, the long hair and tattoos and things like that. But anyway, Jimmy says, "Aye, go for it. We'll have the penalty shootout." And as it was, we described the penalties as they happened, and Carle got through 4-2 on penalties, and we thought we'd done a great job. Not so a couple of weeks later when Thomas Prague, the MD, called me and he says, "What a word with you." He says, "Who gave the go-ahead to do the penalty shootout?" I said, "Well, Jimmy Gellertley and myself agreed it was a good idea. Maybe a good idea on the night. We've just had a bill from the SFA for £1,000 for taking a live broadcast from a football ground, and we've got to pay it." I felt should have said, "Well, you can take it out of all the wages and expenses you've never given me for the last 12 years, but I didn't have the presence of mind to say that. But Murray Firth duly paid the fine, and it left a wee bit of a sour taste. But the other one was a bit funnier. I was doing a Fraserburgh game, and I was doing my live feed-in, as it were, and Paul Keith had scored, but he'd scored a goal, but it was a fluky goal. And I meant to say Paul Keith's miss-hit shot, and it came out as Paul Keith's miss-shit hot. And his girlfriend, who's now his wife at the time, came up and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Thank you very much for the compliment." And I said, "How do you mean the compliment?" She just called and said, "Paul Keith's miss-shit hot, that must be me." I suppose it must be. And it was just a wee slip of the tongue, but I think I probably got away with it on the night.
Your name's synonymous. Everybody knows you from the P&J. You've covered Highland League, as you say, for many, many years. I mean, how many games? Do you have any idea? It's a lot of games.
Yeah, it's 12 years at Murray Firth and 17 at the P&J. So that's over 1,000 games I've covered in Highland League football, Carole, and I've enjoyed each and every one of it. Everybody's made me very, very welcome. I think it's helped that I had a grounding in Highland League from the age of 10 with Rothis. I've never hidden my allegiance. Once a Rothis boy, always a Rothis boy. I've never really hidden my allegiance. I did, when I was covering Rothis games, try to be unbiased. And,
no, he didn't.
But I've mixed with many, many lovely people. And even today, we've got Alan Freeland, magnificent referee. Alan, we've had some great fun along the way. Charlesworth. Charlie, win, lose or draw, you always fronted up to me and gave me an interview. You could sometimes be on a downer as well, Charlie, if things didn't go your way, but you always fronted up, and I really appreciate it. And I thank you both for being friends over the years as well as colleagues.
Yeah. Likewise, Dave. Likewise.
Brilliant. So your annual P&J Team of the Year, always a contentious subject. Do you have any method for selection? Do you get little nudges from folk? Is there any ground rules? Do you get a bung?
Yeah, no, never. A lot of people used to say, "Well, I'll be in your team next year, Dave, won't you?" And I said, "Well, it depends how well you do, because my secret between my Team of the Year was I did it based on games that I watched. Now, you might have only seen Port William once a season, possibly twice a season. Rothis maybe a couple of times a season. And most of the games you were watching the top games, I suppose. So to be honest, the first game that went on my team sheet was usually Eric Watson, because he was, we don't him on the other week. He was a man they loved to hate, but everybody would have liked Eric Watson in their team. He was a bully in the pitch, but by God was he a leader of men. And he was in my team most of the time. And it was the hardest thing I had to do all season was pick my team of the year. I know now that they're limited possibly to, you know, maybe is it one a season or two a team or one a team? I think they're trying to bring that in. But I did it on merit. I did it on the players I saw, and occasionally a Rothis player might creep in. A Fort William player has been on the bench, maybe not made the team, but they've been on the bench. And I like to try and include everyone if it was at all possible. And I know of it.
Dave, it's your opinion. It's your opinion at the end of the day. And I say it's your opinion at the end of the day, Dave. That's football's all about opinions. That's it.
It is. And it used to get others writing in with their teams of the year. And that's what it's all about. And I never 100% agreed with my pals John Ennis or Brian Barclay or anybody else who put in their team of the year. But, you know, I always like to think it was an honest opinion, and it was on merit, and it was on games I watched. And that's what I did, Carole. I picked it as honestly as I could.
And that's all you can do. And as you say, Charlie, it's all about opinions. And that's the great thing about football, is that we've all got different opinions. And that's where the chat comes from. You know, if we all thought the same.
And the intrigue.
There'd be no chat and banter. So finally, Dave, what's been your proudest interview or piece of editorial? And who, dead or alive, would you have liked to have interviewed?
It's a tricky one, Carole. The interview I've done that probably had the most effect on me was a guy I interviewed, and I thought, my God, this man's got charisma. He was a world superstar, and he fell from grace in latter years. But I interviewed him for about 4 or 5 minutes, along with another journalist, and his name was Tiger Woods. And he just had the utmost charisma. I've never met anybody with such charisma as Tiger Woods. And we know he's fallen from grace in recent years, but I thought he was immense and very personable, because it was at the Open down in Sandwich about 12 years ago. And I was waiting for Paul Laurie to come in to do Paul's interview. And Woods came in before him. And I was behind the scorer's tent. And Woods recognised a lady standing next to me who happened to be a retired American journalist. And he came up and spoke to her and gave her a cuddle and a kiss. And he said to us, standing beside, "Are you a journalist?" We said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I'm going on the practice ground. I've not had a great day today. I'm not going back to the press tent with 800 journalists. I'll speak to you two. You can take the message back with you." We've never been so popular because we transcribed the Tiger Woods interview. It lasted about 4 or 5 minutes. And he spoke individually to myself and this other guy. And we spoke to him, and he looked at us, and he gave us honest answers. And by God, the man had charisma. I thought he was amazing.
Brilliant. That's a story and a half.
Yeah. Other ones that, and Martin, you've been in the same boat as me. You had the pleasure of doing after dinner speaking with some great people. 2 people I'll mention. One I knew in the after dinner circuit, but I met him before because I phoned him up and I said, "Look, I would love to meet you. I would love you to give me some of the experiences you've known throughout the game." And he said, I said, "Well, I'm going down to Glasgow within the next month." He says, "When you're going to Glasgow, you come and see me. We'll have a couple of hours together." Well, I spent 4 hours with this man, and he sat me down and he told me about his life in the broadcasting industry, and with a cup of tea with Sheila, his wife, and some home bacon. And I was there for 4 hours. And he was a lovely man called David Francie, the voice of radio sport. And he was absolutely wonderful. And I did a charity thing up in Caithness. Francie was at it for my 40th birthday because he was doing it for charity the next night along with Jim Baxter and Brian McGinley. David Francie was an absolute gent. And another guy who I have the utmost respect for was Jim Watt, the former world lightweight champion in the world. Did a dinner with Jim on Saturday night in Fraserburgh. He came up on the Friday night, stayed with us along with Jim Leishman. And I don't know the date, but I know exactly the date it was. The day it was the day that Falkirk got beat by Kilmarnock in the Scottish Cup, because Jim Watt and Jim Leishman went to bed that afternoon and didn't watch the football, started to watch it and said, oh, well, we're up early playing golf with you this morning at Duffhouse Royal. I have to go to our bed. I says, you weaklings, get away to your bed when there's a Scottish Cup final on. But later on that afternoon, Jim Watt came out, and it was about 6 months after, tragically, he lost his son in a road accident within a couple of 100 yards of his house. And it was the first time Jim had been away from home and from his wife in that 6 month period. And every hour on the hour, he phoned his wife to see how his wife was coping. But he was stopping with us the next night as well. And our son was the same age as him, and was sat outside, and Jim found Fraser's guitar, and he maybe in some dire straits with a 4-string guitar, and we had a wonderful afternoon in the garden after the football, before we went to dinner, Leishman trying to sing, and Jim Watt being very good at what he does. My wife was so impressed with him and said, whatever that guy did, he started as a car mechanic, he had his own business as beautiful cars he used to let out to people who could rent out these lovely cars. Whatever, everyone said to me, whatever this guy done, he would have been a great success at it. And he was a lovely, lovely man. And so tragically, a couple of years ago, he lost his lovely daughter, who was a presenter on Sky Sports. Sadly, she took her own life, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago. He had an amazing sadness both times in his life. And he's a lovely, lovely man. I have the hugest respect for Jim Watt, the boxer. And one man I would have loved to have interviewed and I never have the chance to do. I have a great passion for the sport of cricket. Love my football, love my golf, but I really love my cricket. And I would love to have met the late, great Brian Johnston, the cricket commentator. He died in his 80s. He's one that I would have loved to have sat down, had a chat about cricket. Brian Johnston. That's the one I've missed out on.
Well, someday maybe up in that big cricket ground in the sky to
You never know, Carol.
Conversation. That was great. Thanks very much, Dave. Really enjoyed that.
Thanks, Carol.
Nice one, Dave. Nice
and
one.
now over to Martin.
Charlie.
Oh, hello.
The commencement of your management career in the Highland League, as you said, you leave Elgin City, and suddenly within a few days, you're appointed manager at Lossiemouth and working with the likes of Alan McIntosh.
Yeah.
Great memories at Lossie, yeah.
Yeah, I did. When I look at it now, it was the most natural progression for me, I think, after being at Elgin. Although I do highlight it wasn't the initial intention, but the job came up, and I stepped into it with one idea that I had to improve what was going on, in my opinion. If it wasn't a case of just stepping in and filling a seat, I wanted to improve us, with no budget as such. Royce was there, and we would sort of do with a couple £100 here and there if need be, but I was actually having to scour local areas and see what we had in the beginning, and I think it's just as Drab had left to go to Rothis. A few people left at the same time, Rattray and others. Stu Cameron, Cotter, he turned himself into a coach from that point on. We instilled a lot of changes, if you like, and it took 5 years to get anywhere but at that point in time, obviously, if you remember, 2007-ish, Devon Vale were the team that were flying it back then with Greg, etc. So I used that as my benchmark, probably not a wise decision, miles ahead, but, Lossie were bottom, Vale were top. We had to meet somewhere in the middle, we had to get up that table. So I really enjoyed the adventure of trying to improve us, and we did improve every year in terms of a points return. And back then I was using points per game and goals per game, goals against. I was using all that against ourselves to challenge us and just have the awareness to try and improve, And as Dave just pointed out earlier, I'd always interview, and when you take a job like Lossie, you got to expect a lot of upset, a lot of anger, and a lot of disappointment, So you're trying to turn as much of that as you can into positives and have more positives than negatives. And I think in the end we probably did, And I think the final thing that probably made me feel pretty good about it all was appreciate that over the next 4 or 5 years, Vale were on the way down a little bit, but it was still my benchmark. And in 2011-12, we took 4 points out of them. So I kind of thought to myself, job done. and that's kind of how we got there. But the journey to get there was really enjoyable, and we started off with 3 points and then maybe 15 or something, and got up and we finished off with 49, and 49 points for Lossy is quite a lot of points in the big scheme of things. But some memorable games against some outstanding managers, if I'm really honest. Greg is one, Dave Cormie, etc., etc. 2 bogey teams, Forest Mechanics and Clack. They were bogey teams for me, 100%. But I remember one game against Locos, and it was just like chess. Dave Cormie was making all the changes at Lossy, making all these changes, and as he changed, I changed. As he changed, I changed. I remember him going across saying, "What are you doing here?" And we beat them 2-1 in the 89th minute, and I was so delighted because it was just chop change, and all that. I enjoyed that. So it was just a natural progression, and I think the lads that went on that journey with me, Martin McMullen, Kev Stewart, Jum, the list goes on, JJ, etc., and the youngsters we brought in from Elgin as well. I think they enjoyed themselves, and we've got something to talk about that was relative success, if that's the right way of putting it. So that was that little period.
Well, obviously, taking that 4 points off Vale 2011-12 must have been noted at Princess Royal Park, because you then move along the coast and join Highland Vale.
Yeah. Bob McLardy had just taken over as chairman. I was working in Aberdeen by this time, so it was a tricky decision in that respect, because I was really busy at work doing Aberdeen, leaving here at 5:30 in the morning at Lossy, Aberdeen, via Banff on the way home for training, to get home at 10:30 at night for your tea. So this became quite difficult. However, I was really, really proud to be offered the opportunity. Stu Cameron had actually retired a bit before this, at the back end of the Lossy season. He'd had enough at that point, so I reapproached him to go to Vale. He said, "Yeah, I'll join you." So right-hand man came with us, and again, I would say what your class is relative success there. I enjoyed rebuilding the squad a little bit, and we took a few players from Lossy that were ready for the step up. Scotty Fraser was my captain there, and he guided me through. I remember the first meeting we had with all the players upstairs, and upstairs at Vale, you got the left and right, and you got the boardroom on the right, and you've got the hospitality on the left. Obviously midweek, and all the players had come in and that, and had my chat and what have you. And then it was chaos for about 2 hours, going between 2 rooms with Scotty on my shoulder, convincing players to stay. And I'm like, my God, this is chaos, But we achieved the majority of keeping the players. And 2 years it was. I was there, just a short period of time within the club's history for sure. I think we were 6th and 7th, or 5th and 6th over 2 years. But what I really enjoyed was the 2 Scottish Cup runs we had. We had 2 great Scottish Cup runs, and actually played Peterhead, didn't we? In that first year of 2012, I think it was. Came out of the blocks 3-0 up into the second half or half time or whatever. And then you came back strong to 3-2. Another 5 minutes and we'd have lost that game. But that was the start of a good Scottish Cup run, and 2 years of that. So really enjoyable time there. I was really proud to have been a manager at Vale, really, if I'm honest.
Particular Scottish Cup, before my time, but it's well documented, purely and simply because it was Jim McInally's first game.
Yes.
Charge. Your name is actually engraved on the baseball bat behind his desk.
But the reality is, Martin, that was the quality of squad that Vale had. Despite, I know there was a change on at Vale, there was still some very good players there. So I inherited a very good squad. I think it was only the season before, wasn't it, that they lost out to Bucky for the league in the last game of the season, wasn't it? I think that was the year before, wasn't it, under Scotty? Yeah. So yeah, I was really quite chuffed for that time there.
So 2 years down the road, and you're back to Lossy.
Yeah, I left Vale because I felt, essentially, from my point of view, I was starting to fail the club because of my workload. It wasn't really practical to be doing the miles I was doing and the hours I was doing, and I wasn't doing my scouting properly and so on and so forth. So in the interest of the club, it was time for me to move on. So that was my decision. And I had great support there with Bob and Linda and Stuart. They were I think there was hard times behind the scenes, if I'm perfectly honest, and they never showed their hand to me. So I do thank them for that on record, and we do have a good relationship still.
Charlie,
so yeah, back to Lossie. Sorry.
I was just going to say, do you think you're maybe your own worst critic?
Oh, I'm terrible, yeah. Yeah, I'm terrible. I know that. However, back to Lossie. 2 good years at Lossie. Again, I wasn't going to go back. I was just sat in a couple of games. Then Roy started putting the pressure on, and that's when we went to tying it with Dave and had a meal and whatever. I said, okay. So a couple of years at Lossie, probably stabilised it again, mid-table again for a couple of years. A couple of good results in there, really, with Broder over Christmas at 4-1, which I think hurt them for the title. But you could tell it was a windy night, 23rd and something, and I knew psychologically we had them because I didn't want to be at Lossie that night, so I drilled that home to the lads, and I had a set of warriors at Lossie both times round, without a shadow of a doubt. We weren't the best, we weren't the prettiest, but the sleeves were always rolled up, and not very often they let me down, really, So that was the Lossie period, and then it was just time for a wee rest before Dufton.
Yep.
When Mikey Mokin calling.
So I refer to you make a trip up the hill to Dufton.
Aye.
I know you'd obviously would be aware of Dufton. I think in my time we played friendlies down at Lossie.
Yes.
In fact,
that's right.
I think we maybe give you a wee scare one frosty night.
Probably.
But was you aware of the setup, the facilities they had?
To answer that, the reason why I've been there the first time and the second time was because of the infrastructure, the people that are running it, without a shadow of a doubt. And I'm not just saying that because I wouldn't be in football now if it wasn't for. I don't want to go back to Highland League. It's just too much for me now at my age as I'm getting on, and hence why Jim Stables, he calls us co-managers. I'm more than happy to do the coaching and stuff like that, and let him have all the phone calls. But over the two stints at Dufton, obviously there at the moment, and last time with Big Mikey Moore, the club's doing everything it possibly can to support the management and the players with no fuss. Everything's done behind the scenes, and as you say, it's a well-run club, a great facility for the juniors, and actually with that big stand that they've got now that we spoke about earlier on, that's actually a fantastic asset for these friendlies we've got just now, because we can't use a changing room, so it's actually somewhere we can get changed. It's part of our COVID bubble. So in that respect, it's quite good. But yeah, I'm very comfortable with Dufton as long as I'm still involved in football. Yeah.
Now you did have a wee sabbatical down at Huntly, but that didn't quite work out for you, did it?
No, it didn't. And I recognise that quite quickly. But I persevered. And when I look back on it, I think one or two other managers with a little bit more clout than me in terms of success didn't do great either. So I quickly recognised, and I'm not saying rocket. I could tell what the problem was as far as I was concerned, but I persevered. One of the biggest problems I had was the previous management had done pretty well, and then in 2018 we had that really bad winter from sort of November through to February when pretty much everything stopped, if you remember. So I was through in Lossie. The team was predominantly from Aberdeen, and here at Lossie, you got your shorts on at 5 degrees, and through in Aberdeen, you're not realising it's actually minus 15. So at tea time, you're getting a phone call saying, "Charlie, where are we training tonight?" And I was thinking we're going with the Astro at Kemney or at Inverurie or something, and it's all frozen over. So I was massively out of the environment of actually what's going on in Aberdeen, and like everything, you weren't getting training facilities in time because everybody else had booked you up. So the whole thing was a tough gig, and we also had a few issues with the committee wanting to move some players on, changing the wage structure. So that's the stuff that people didn't see. That's the stuff I tried to help overcome, shall we say. Bit of a problem solver in that respect. Worked closely with George and Steve Ennis, who was my director of football. Did everything for me. A lot of respect for them both. But I think the club was trying to make changes, and that was affecting on the park as well a little bit. And we needed a couple more seasons, I would suggest, to maybe get it where it needed to be. However, for reasons within the changing room, I thought it better to leave. That's the outcome of that one. And, put your hands up. Sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. And you just get to recognise it.
But a fairly easy decision to return to Westburn Park, Dufton, was it?
Well, a backstory to that is that when at the end of 2011-12 with Lossie, the season I left to go to Vale, Stu Cameron, just towards the end of that season, says, "I've had enough, Charlie, I'm leaving." I said, "Okay, no problem." And at that point in time, I was going to be at Lossie for the next season, you know, as it stood. So I thought, right, who can I get to help me? So I spoke to Jim Stables, and I went through to see him at Keith, and he agreed. He was very excited about coming to help me at Lossie. So that was, let's say that was the Saturday, whatever date it was. And then I got the phone call from Vale that midweek. So then I'm back at Jim's the following Saturday to say, "Jim, I'm going to Vale. Sorry, mate." And he's like, "Oh, bloody hell." I was really looking forward to that, you know. And Stu went with me to Vale. So I kind of left Jim hanging a little bit. But as it turned out, he then went to Lossie with Stevie Dunn, didn't he?
Yeah.
So Jim phoned me start of last season with Dufton because I wasn't doing anything. "Do you fancy coming on board to give me a hand?" And I said, "No, I'm taking time out, Jim." You know, so that was that. I said, "Oh, okay, all right, fair enough." And then as a couple of 2 or 3 weeks went on, I thought, I'll just message him, see how he's getting on for coaching staff and players and that. Well, that was a mistake, wasn't it? Yeah, yeah, Charlie, yeah, what are you doing? I says, I says, "I'll come round for a cup of tea." So I went through to Keith, and then I says, "I'll come give you." And I felt I owed him a little bit just for letting him down with the Lossie job a few years ago. So here we are. So cup managers, but to be fair to Jim, I'm giving him all the phone calls and all the organising with the committee. So Jim's your man. So if we win, Jim's your man. If we lose, Jim's your man. Okay.
Well, here's hoping.
But it's going okay.
Here's hoping that Dufton build on the success with the drive and the desire off the park, that it's successful on the park as well, and you get back where they belong in the top ranks in the juniors. Before we finish off, I've just got to say, you must be immensely proud that you've got two boys that have continued the Charlesworth involvement in the Highland League. You must be a proud man.
Yeah, most definitely. You know, you told me I'm my own critic, etc., and all that sort of stuff, and maybe lacked a little bit of confidence at their age as a footballer at this level. You know, these guys are quite established now. They know how it all works, and I'm chuffed to bits that they've seen that for themselves. You know, stand on their own 2 feet now, Martin. And you know, they've been pretty good footballers. I mean, Martin's obviously got his two medals for leagues and stuff like that. Had a relatively successful youth career up with Elgin and Cali, what have you. And Collins learned his own way through the Highland League, etc. After Elgin. So yeah, I am pleased for him. You know, keep the name going as some of us fade away into the background a little bit. Yeah, thank you.
Great stuff, Charlie. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your memories. And we'll certainly be looking out for the name Charlesworth, both in the junior ranks and the Highland League once it gets up and running again. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Martin. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Hi Martin, Dave. I just wanted to say well done on the podcast that you've been doing during lockdown. Thoroughly enjoyed when I've listened into Northern Lights, and I wish you guys all the best for the rest of the football season. As for Dave keeping me out of the Clydesdale Bank team, the only team he kept me out of was the Clydesdale Bank veterans team, because he's so much older than me. All the best, guys.
Well, that's quite amazing. 76,832, the amount of hours that our viewers have watched Northern Lights. Quite unbelievable. Would never have believed that from the start. 76,832. Quite magnificent.
Brilliant.
And my old mate Richard Gordon, who was, in fact, my reserve goalkeeper in the Clydesdale Bank, whatever he says. I was Plot Clark at Harbour Branch in Aberdeen, down by Regent Quay, and Richard was a teller at St Nicholas Branch, up in the middle of town. And he was my reserve goalie, and sadly, because I never got injured, Richard never got a game, and I'm deeply sad about that. But he's a magnificent broadcaster. I tune into him every weekend. He's a top man and a top broadcaster. All the best to you, Richard.
Here, here. Thanks for very nice comments, Richard. Folks, we have reached that stage after 24 weeks and all these hours and all these viewers. We've finally come to the end of, I'm going to say, the current series, because we're really doing again what's in front of us. A very special thanks to our guests tonight, Alan Freeland, Charlie Charlesworth, and our new co-host, Carole Innes. For you Rothis folk, please watch the show right to the very end. There's a wee something for you guys, especially for the Rothis folk, that'll come up at the end along with the credits. We have to thank everybody for watching, Dave, haven't we? It's just, I mean.
No, I think we must thank all those folk who tuned into us, 76,832 hours, all those 20,000 plus people. I think maybe that gives us an incentive to one day come back with some more programs, Martin. I don't know about you. I know it's busy at work, but maybe in the odd occasion we may be able to come back and give them a special edition of Northern Lights. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I don't know about my wife. She keeps saying, "What the hell are you doing up there for all these hours?" You know. But,
I know. My wife's desperate to get our dining room table back. That's for sure. But folks, it's not goodbye. Hopefully, it's only good night. Now, at the initial planning of tonight's programme, it had only just come to light that the Highland League had agreed to postpone the restart of the Highland League until the 28th of November. And this is where you're going to come in, Dave, and tell the viewers what we're going to be doing next. But you can still do that. It just, we can't give them a specific date.
No, that's right. We were hoping to be back in November, Martin, with the preview to the Highland League Cup final. We've got the backing from the Highland League Secretary, Rod Houston, that we can interview a couple of players. We can interview a couple of managers, and we've got a very, very special assistant doing all the other bits and pieces for the cup final.
That'll be me. Carole? Yes, I will be getting the views from both sets of fans, hoping to see their team lifting some silverware.
And you never can, it might even be our home tune club, Rothis. Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, thank you so much for watching, not just tonight, but for over the entire lockdown period, 24 weeks. It's been phenomenal. It's been great fun. But as always, we'll ask you to keep safe, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you, and good night from Northern Lights.